So that does sound like a good time to be able to do that. And I'll go ahead and open it up for any questions or comments from colleagues. All right, seeing none. Mark, when you hold on there, I'll go ahead and open this up if anyone has any public comments on item 6.2.
Sorry, Michael, did you call on me? I stepped out for a minute.
Oh, yes.
No, yeah.
We have.
I apologize.
We have public comments on item 6.2, and I see Sue Rodman has her hand up.
Sue Rodman, go ahead, unmute yourself.
Okay.
Okay, now I think I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
You are, Sue. Go ahead. Good evening.
I'm really happy to see this event going forward. I think we've put in an awful lot of work on it. And one of the things that Mark didn't tell you about that I think is going to be really spectacular is that we have a fire demonstration table. It's affectionately called the sand table, where it will allow us to project neighborhoods in Placerville and show how they would burn when people have not done any home hardening or defensible space versus how they would burn if people have been active in preventing their property from burning. So I think that will be really informative for people to see, and something that's brand new we didn't have last year. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Sue. Okay, seeing no further comments, we'll bring it back. Again, Mark, thank you for all the work on this, and thank you for getting our legislative delegation together on this item as well. I think it's hugely important that our new state senator and our new assembly member are both going to be in attendance, as they're getting to learn and understand our city and our county a little bit more. So I think kudos to you and the council for getting that together. And we're looking forward to the next update. And I'm looking forward to being there and welcoming everybody to this event as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I just want to thank again Chief Wren and Chief Cordero for their assistance and their opening the doors. Chief Cordero is responsible for the loan of the fire simulation table. I think everybody's going to be very impressed with what we're going to see. So we appreciate El Dorado Hills Fire Department making that possible. And the other big thing is I've gotten really positive results from the animal services. El Dorado County Animal Services is very excited to do the animal evacuation policies and procedures. That's a huge issue. We're excited to have that. Thank you and good night.
All right. Thank you, Mark. Okay. We will now move on to item 6.3. And this is to acknowledge and file our workers' compensation report. And Mr. Warren has this for us.
Good evening, Mayor Saragosa and Council. Tonight we have Deborah DeLong here to present the report to you. So with that, I'll hand it over to Deborah.
Good evening, Deborah.
Good evening. Just a quick introduction. My name is Deborah DeLong. I am Vice President Client Services with Sedgwick. We are your workers' compensation risk management third-party administrator, I should say. And I'm happy to be here this evening. With that, I'll get started. And I don't know that I have the ability to share my screen. Dave, maybe you can do that. I tried earlier just to practice and it didn't go well for me.
Here you go.
Perfect. Thank you, Dave. So we've got two things in the package, but I'd like to start out really quickly taking you through your trending report. What we've done is we've added, there we go. What we've done is we've added the fiscal year 21-22 to this report so that we're able to look at what are the trending of your claims. So really, this is a 5-year look at your program. And just briefly, I won't go through every piece of this. There were 8 new injuries in this fiscal year. So in talking about 21-22, the costs were very low for those claims. And you can see those costs. So The very top section looking at the volume of claims by type of claim, and then the bottom section really looking at what was that revenue associated. The biggest driver of the low cost was that there were only 28 days of lost time. So your costs are down. They're looking really healthy, and that's because you all have done a really good job at getting folks back to work and reducing that lost time. 28 days is pretty significant there. The total paid chart for all injuries has increased for the fiscal year, but that was due to one particular settlement, and that was a Franklin Santos. The closing ratio, which compares how many claims to the new claims, and I think, Dave, that's probably on the next sheet, is looking really good because we're really able to close out those files. And we really strive for 100% of closure, which really means as we open a file, our goal is that we're closing claims as well. So that looks very healthy. The overall picture of the program looks really good. And our goal is, of course, to keep your inventory low. As I was reviewing this data, I didn't see any trends or areas of concern. There is nothing, no large spikes to point out. This is a really good trend. The chart that we have to celebrate the top 10, you only have 3 claims that occurred with or were incurred above 100,000. And the highest is under 250,000, which is really good news there. So your trending is in range with what we would expect to see. So with that, and there are a few additional slides. If you look at with the body parts, we've gone through and given you sort of an idea of what your body part exposures look like. You can see that your total top 5 of body parts, you're looking at fingers. There's the largest amount, eyes, hands. So they're really identified in that fashion. Pretty normal here. Dave, if you want to move to the next one. Sorry. This is where we really wanted to capture the top nature of injuries. Is it a laceration, a strain? So outside of body parts, you can see that lacerations and strains, and this is pretty standard. They're always at your highest, and they're standard across the board for workers' compensation. Strains, sprains, and lacerations. And then top 5 occupations of injury. This is also in range. Police officers, they're out there doing some pretty physical activities. And then maintenance, and they're on. The next slide, if we can, really looks at departments by fiscal year. What are your spend? What are your areas in your departments? Of course, you're going to see police there simply because there are more claims in that particular area. Nothing concerning there at all. In fact, that's very standard. And then the next few slides, 7, 8, and 9, we really captured your top 10 workers' compensation claims. What those claims were, we left out the detail of the folks, but what those paid incurred were. And then your next few slides, or your frequency by member. And this is member of NCC. So if you go to, I believe you're on the next slide. These are in alphabetical order by the city. And you'll see Placerville is there. You could take this and sort this down so that you would be able to look at your frequency and then your severity and where you fall within the membership. But you really are standalone on that and doing very well in the program.
Thanks, Deborah. I had one comment. When you compare Placerville to other cities with similar payroll sizes, for example, the city of Red Bluff and the city of Auburn, Placerville is well below both in frequency and average cost per claim. So doing a great job.
There was one more attachment, and I'll just briefly state it's really interesting reading. It's the CWCI bulletin that came out. We gave you a copy of that. It was new data. This really covers new data from the California Office of Self-Insured Plans, the OSIP, taking a look back in the impact of COVID. And really looking at what COVID claims did to public entities. For the most part, as you read through that, if you have the opportunity, Most public entities were hit really, really hard with COVID. We had a huge influx of claims. Our overall, for example, for the pool NCCSIF, we really experienced about 650 additional claims that were not sort of your standard. They were COVID related. The impact was not there for you all, which was really exciting. So you don't fall into those huge trends. The good news is that while this does impact a lot of public entity, the costs for those claims are much lower because they're usually an open and a closed. We track them, we make sure the injured worker got the treatment that was really required, and they are short-lived. Not all, but the majority of those claims are very short-lived. So interesting reading there. Also, just a side note, that bulletin does a really nice job to identify the overlaying impact of sort of change in jobs, the loss of talent. We've all experienced sort of what that impact was. I think you all are a bit more sheltered from that. We were not, I can say. Many were not. So it's interesting to watch that sort of layer upon and what that looks like as we come out of it. So really, really happy to share this with you and happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Deborah. Thank you, Dave, for that. It all sounds like all good news, but I want to go ahead and open it up for any comments or questions from council. All right, not seeing any, I will go ahead and open this item up for any public.
No hands raised, Mayor Saragosa.
All right, thank you very much. We'll go ahead and close the public item portion of this, bring it back to the council. Again, Deborah, thank you very much. It's good to see that we're on the right trend here, and we hope that we keep it that way. And so we'll look forward to next year's report and hope that it'll be even better. And I'm glad you were able to go. I know it was going to be difficult to get you here otherwise, but I'm happy that you were able to join us this evening as well.
Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. Well, seeing no other comments, then we'll go ahead and file this item. And again, thank you, Dave. Okay. We'll move on to item 6.4, and that's the announcements to the public of the public member appointments to the Planning Commission and to the Recreation and Parks Commission. And Regina has this item for us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is just a quick announcement of the recent Planning Commissioner and Recreation and Parks Commissioner appointments. A special meeting was held on February 15th, where applicants for the two commissions were interviewed in a public forum by the full City Council. The minutes for these interviews are part of your agenda packet today under item 7.1B. The following individuals were appointed by the City Council to serve one full 4-year term on the Planning Commission with terms ending March 2027, and that is Amy Lepper. This is her second term. Chris Keeney, she's also serving her second term, and Kirk Smith. Ryan Carter was also appointed to serve a partial unexpired term on the Planning Commission, which was vacated by Nicole Gottberg, who was elected to the City Council, and that term ends March of 2025. The following were appointed by the City Council to serve one full 4-year term on the Recreation and Parks Commission, ending March 2027, and that is Larissa Lujan, Lynn Spencer, and Tony Wendell. So we offer our congratulations to these new and returning commissioners, and we thank everyone who expressed interest in serving their community. And the next application period for these commissions will open again in early 2025, and we encourage anyone interested to apply at that time. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Regina. Any questions or comments? All right. Seeing none, I do see a public comment. So we'll go ahead and open up this item for public comment.
All right, Ruth, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you. Thank you for
Good evening,
taking
Ruth.
thank you. Good evening. I just had a process question, if you could answer, and if not now, another time. But I know at other times when you've done recruitments if you haven't gotten a pool of enough applicants, there are times I've known that you have extended the application period. And so likewise, I'm just wondering if has there ever been a time when you've done interviews and you weren't satisfied with those interviews and at that point in time decided to reopen the pool? It's just a kind of a theoretical question. I did sit through all of the interviews. I was impressed by the process. So this is not, any derogatory comment towards the applicants or who was, appointed. But I was just curious if you've ever at that point in time decided we don't have enough qualified people at the interview stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth.
Since I've been here since 2015, I cannot recall if we have, I do know that we have extended the application period because we may not have received enough applications, but not since 2015 anyway. Am I aware that we have decided that we weren't going to appoint anybody that we had interviewed? Cleve, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I agree with you, Regina. We have not done that. I will also add, though, there is no requirement that just because those are the ones you receive that you would have to appoint someone. So that process that Ruth talked about, if you decided there was someone that, there were not applicants that you felt met the needs of the council or the city, you could reject those, and just like we would do with a regular recruitment and go out and recruit again. So.
Yeah, that was just going to add the same thing. It's like if we didn't want to vote for somebody out of the applicant pool, we certainly have that right to not vote for somebody in that position. So, good question.
All right, thank you.
Michael, I believe at least for me, your volume is going out on us again. Is everyone else hearing that same thing?
Let me do this.
I can hear him fine.
Can you? Maybe it was just me. Then let's continue.
Okay, I was going to say, like, I could log back out and have Jackie take over if everybody. Is anyone else having the issue?
It's kind of intermittent, Michael.
Yeah, for the most part, it's fine. I had the same problem with the laptop I was using once, where if I looked over here or kind of moved my head too much, it would stop. It would miss things, and so I suggest you sit very close to your camera and talk right at you.
Sounds good. Let me know. Just pop in if you can't hear me. Okay. So with that, I will just say I want to again thank all the applicants for folks that put their names forward for all of the commissions that we ended up interviewing for. This is the first time in a while. I will say that we had more candidates than we had seats, and so that's always a good thing that we're getting more people engaged. So I want to thank everybody in the community that put their name forward, whether you were appointed or not appointed. We had really good candidates, so I appreciate that. So with that, we're going to go ahead and move to the consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion by roll call vote unless any member of the council wishes to remove an item for discussion. And I will go ahead and open up the consent calendar for any public comments.
No raised hands, Mayor Saragosa.
Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and bring the consent calendar back to council for any further discussion or motion.
I'll move the consent calendar.
A second.
All right, thank you for those first and seconds. Seeing no further comments, roll call, please.
Councilmember Clarici,
Aye.
Councilmember Gottberg,
Aye.
Councilmember Yarbrough,
Aye.
Vice Mayor No,
Aye.
Mayor Saragosa.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody. All right, we're moving on to item 8, which is the public comment for non-agendized items. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wishing to address the council on on any matter not on the agenda, and that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city council. The mayor reserves the right to limit the speaker's time to 3 minutes, and we'll be doing sort of the timer offline tonight, but we'll let you know if you're coming up on those 3 minutes. So with that, I will go ahead and open up item 8.1, which is oral communication.
All right, we'll start with Ruth. Go ahead.
Oh, I was hoping not to be first, but okay. I so appreciate you doing this meeting by Zoom tonight. I know it's out of necessity because of the weather and people not being able to get safely to the meeting. But what I see it as is good governance and making your meetings more accessible. And I would like to ask that you really seriously consider the way the county has their board supervisor meetings where it's a hybrid of both in-person and Zoom. I know you've done that before and I think it's doable. And, you know, especially you now start your meetings at 5 and not 6, which makes them inaccessible for people who are commuting home and starting dinner for their families, et cetera, et cetera. But if they could Zoom in and do 2 tasks at the same time, then they'd be more aware of what the city is doing. And so thank you for doing this. I know the resolution under which you did it, you just squeaked in under the governor's mandate about COVID. I thought that was sort of a creative way of having this meeting. But anyway, please consider for the future doing a hybrid model. It'd be very much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth.
Okay, Sue Rodman, go ahead.
I would like to thank you also for having this meeting over Zoom. My driveway is not passable today, so I could not be there in person. And so I'm very grateful to be able to do this on Zoom. So I thank you for being open to the possibilities and aware of the constraints on a lot of us. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, Sue.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 525, go ahead.
Hi, this is Leo Bennett Koshon, echoing what others say about Zoom. And I got flooded the first time around, nothing super significant, but hardwood floors, that kind of thing. And I'm out there building my berm again and came into during open forum. So another advantage of Zoom sometimes in these crazy weather times. Just to shout out, this is a joke, but I know the mayor is struggling with volume and all of that. But I'm just so impressed, just so that you know, by your city council and your staff. Hopefully this isn't the honeymoon period, but passing on, just like you do fine job staff, I'm passing on fine job city council, because the grapevine's telling me they love watching your meetings because you're civil, cognizant of the issues, and good discussions without any like, hey, let's get into the, insulting type mode. So, the takeaway was this is a council that really enjoys each other. And my training's public administration. And when you have that trust and that, hey, I want to show up at a meeting with my fellow council members, you guys have struck gold. So looking forward to watching you handle some very complicated issues going forward. Thank you for taking my comment.
Thank you, Leo.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 857, go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Can you hear me?
We can, Michael. Good evening.
Okay. Hey, Michael, your volume is okay on my end. So I have a request in case I can't make it. When our 3 city council members represent the city at the El Dorado County Transportation Commission to discuss the US 50 plans, that I would request that you squash once and for all the idea of making a toll road in any way, shape, manner, or form. It makes no sense that the state of California taxpayers have funded to the tune of trillions of dollars replacing and rebuilding roads and bridges for earthquake Los Angeles and the Bay Area. And we have this eminently important US 50 that goes across the country and feeds commerce that we should have to pay for it locally, because I did some searching. I couldn't find a place in the US where locals are exempted from tolls. I'm happy to look at it if somebody can find me one. So that's my request. And then just a public service announcement. It's supposed to be brutally cold the next 2 nights. So leave your faucets on a drip, cover your outdoor plumbing, and I'm going to make a hot cup of coffee, go out and cover some fragile plants. So that's all. Good night.
All right. Thank you, Michael.
All right, I see no other hands raised, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. And just on that last, the last caller from Mr. Grobish, I will say from my personal perspective, I think the toll road's a non-starter as a fix for Highway 50. So I'm one vote, but I can tell you, I just don't see that as being a feasible one. So in any event, that's my thoughts on that item as we move forward on it. Okay. Any written communication this evening, Regina? Item 8.2.
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, everybody, for your comments this evening under public comment. And we will go ahead. We didn't have any items removed or any ordinance or any public hearings. We did move item 12.6 up forward. So we're going to start with that item, and that is to adopt a resolution approving the purchase of 3 2023 Ford Police Interceptor utility vehicles, authorize Chief of Police or designee to execute the documentation for that purchase, approve $50,000 budget liquidation from the ARPA fund for the sewer and water bill assistance program, and approve $50,000 budget appropriation from the ARPA fund for 2023 Ford Interceptor. And the Chief has this item for us this evening. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everybody. So back in June of last year, the City Council adopted its 22-23 budget. During that process, just shy of $113,000 was appropriated from the general fund to purchase 2 patrol vehicles and the upfitting of those vehicles. At the time of the adoption, pricing was not available yet for the 2023 Ford Interceptors. The reason for that is we adopt our budget at the end of June. Well, the vehicle ordering and the catalog doesn't come out until September of that year. So we're constantly behind, and the vehicles that we find are usually extra order vehicles from agencies that don't pick up those orders. So we're fortunate enough to move in and purchase those vehicles that were ordered by another entity. So when pricing came out, the vehicles were priced nearly 25% higher than the previous model year. In November 14th of 2022, staff purchased a 2022 Ford Explorer from Folsom Lake Ford in the amount of $42,492.55. Staff is requesting as the City Council ratify that purchase. That was one of the vehicles we contacted the fleet lead purchaser at Folsom Lake Ford, and because of the relationship we have with him, he saw a vehicle come in and held it for us because he knew we were on the hunt for cars. So on December 31st, 2022, one of our police department vehicles was parked at a local shop that was flooded, and that vehicle was one of the newer vehicles that we had purchased just a year prior. The vehicle, the damaged vehicle was a 2024 Interceptor with low miles and used on daily patrol. In January of 23, we lost another vehicle due to a major mechanical issue. And in addition, we also need to replace a vehicle that was high mileage and has become unreliable. Since the beginning of COVID, patrol cars have been difficult to procure due to supply chain issues nationwide. In this past order cycle, Ford had limited their production capacity, and as a result, they closed orders before allowing many smaller agencies to place orders for vehicles. Ford also canceled several orders from larger agencies. They just didn't have the capacity to build based on the demand that came in, so they capped it and closed the orders on everybody. There's no indication that Ford has worked out its production capacity issues, and it may be hard to find vehicles in the upcoming order cycle. The police department has also looked into different makes and models of vehicles listed in the CMAS. However, the price of these vehicles are far beyond what we can support in our budget. Those comparable vehicles are the Chevy Tahoes. The police department was currently in contact with Folsom Lake Ford. Again, because of the relationship we have with them, they reached out to us and said that an agency in Southern California didn't pick up 3 of their vehicles, and they offered them to us first before they sent them out to the general market to other agencies. So this offer was extended to the police department solely because of the relationship we have. We asked them to hold the order until we can bring this to council to ask you fine folks if we can have 3 more patrol vehicles. So with that, I'll answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Chief. Any questions on this item? Not seeing any comments or questions, we'll go ahead and open up this item 12.6 for public comment.
Sue Rodman, go ahead.
Congratulations to our chief friend. Good for you for building those relationships. They're important and they pay off. So, and we need 3 vehicles. We need 3 vehicles. It sounds like we had enough disasters with our vehicles this year that this is the way it is. So I would say, yes, this is something we need to do. That's all.
Thank you, Sue.
Caller 857, go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and Chief. Yes, ditto to building those relationships that helped in this situation. Question, is the flooded vehicle insured, or can you at least salvage important equipment off of it? That's all. Thank you.
All right, Kirk Smith, go ahead. Kirk, you'll have to unmute yourself.
Kirk, you're still on mute. All right, this is feeling like 2020. All right, go for it, Kirk. Your mute's off.
Well, I'm sorry to this new technology, but the question simply is about how many patrol cars do we now have on the road at any one time? You did a great job. Just want to know if it's changed any.
Thank you, Kirk.
All right, last call for public comment on item 12.6. I see no other hands raised, Mr. Mayor.
All right, we'll go ahead and close public comment. Chief, I know we had a couple of questions there if you wanted to make some comments on those.
Yes, thank you. Regarding Mr. Jerobus's question about the insurance, the business that the vehicle was at when it was damaged is going to pay for the vehicle. We don't know how much. We did have initial conversations with them and told them that we would like to remove the emergency equipment on there that's salvageable for cost savings purposes. So they've allowed us to do that. Once we remove that equipment, then they'll send an adjuster out to take a look at it. But the flooding was all the way up past the seats in the vehicle. So we know that most of the electrical components from the manufacturer are totaled out. Some of our stuff is to be announced. We're gonna bench test the radios and stuff like that to ensure that there's no damage inside those. And at any one time, Standard Patrol has 3 vehicles out. Day shift and certain details could extend that up to a total of 5, depending on if officers are working OTS operations or any directed enforcement operations.
Thank you, Chief. And Chief, with these purchases, does this get us back on track to where we were? I know we've been, trying to do the 2 vehicles a year as we sort of age out vehicles, and this is sort of a unique circumstance, but are we still sort of behind on that as we move forward?
No, we should be. If you give me 2 more vehicles next budget year, we're going to be good. We have a total of 5 that need to be replaced. That includes the flooded. We've got 4 vehicles that have miled out, and I've got 1 with a blown transmission. I've got another with a blown motor. So they just don't make them like they used to.
Understood. Okay, thank you.
This is our list that we operate off of. I don't know if you can see the red and all the writing, but that's how we keep track of the current status of our fleet.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion on this item.
I'll move the staff recommendation to purchase the 3 vehicles.
I'll second the motion.
All right, thank you, John. Thank you, Jackie. No further comments. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clarici,
Aye.
Councilmember Goldberg,
Aye.
Councilmember Yarbrough,
Aye.
Vice Mayor No,
Aye.
Mayor Saragosa.
Aye. All right, let's go get those vehicles.
Thank you, Mayor, and we appreciate the support that the council gives the police department.
Absolutely. Thank you. Okay, so that's item 12.6. We're going to go ahead and move back to item 12.1, and that is adopt a resolution approving an agreement with the El Dorado County Farm Trails. 1, agree to move farmers market to the Fox lot, or 2, authorize the use of the bell tower for the farmers market for June of 2023. 3, require the farmers market to have a minimum of 80% agriculture related businesses as defined by state code. And 4, authorize the city manager to execute said agreement. And Mr. Zeller has this report for us this evening. So thank you, Terry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Can you hear me okay? Great.
Yes.
As you know, we're returning to the council with this as a follow-up item from the initial item that was heard on February 14th. And for the benefit of those who were not here for the past meeting, I wanted to go over a little further back than the meeting on the 14th and recap a little bit of the background for everybody. So back in November of 2007, the city of Placerville did meet with El Dorado County Farm Trails, and they did request that they consider organizing and operating a farmers market at the Bell Tower in downtown Placerville. And in June of 2008, Farm Trails established a small farmers market at the Bell Tower location. Now, in my staff report as published as part of the agenda, I had talked about the market occupying the same footprint since and in running since 2008, but staff did reach out to Gary Pigg, who some folks know. He was a management analyst for the city in 2007, and his recollection was that yes, the El Dorado County Farm Trails was asked to start the Bell Tower Farmers Market, but the alley portion was not necessarily included as market space down the alley. The alley was actually closed off and became a dead end so that the pharmacy patrons could actually drive down, park, and then back out of the alley. So I just wanted to make a clarification about that from the staff report. Although the market was smaller in 2008, and it did not really start to grow exponentially right away. It took till 2014 for the city to actually enter into an agreement with El Dorado County Farm Trails that we have record of to formalize the market. And then if you fast forward to the fall of 2021, staff had been getting concerns voiced by the downtown merchants, and that prompted discussion about the possibility of 2022 being the last year for the Wednesday Farmers Market location at the Bell Tower. So staff began working with El Dorado County Farm Trails in the fall of 2022 to plan a move. And then myself and the city manager met with El Dorado County Farm Trails representatives back in January of this year. And then we brought the item to the city council on February 14th meeting. And in that meeting, we outlined options for the location of the farmers market to stay where it was at or to move in other areas. We also presented a survey that sought to gauge the sentiment of the market for the downtown merchants. I think we got about 80 of them distributed and 23 or 24 of them back. And that survey summary was included in the last city council meeting. So at the end of that agenda item at the last meeting, if you recall, council made the motion for staff to meet with El Dorado County Farm Trails and look at options for a transition plan to move the market to another suitable location for the city of Placerville on public property. So on the 22nd of February, City Manager Morris and myself met with representatives of El Dorado County Farm Trails again. And this time the discussion centered around the council's motion and impacts to the viability of the market from different locations and looking at timeframes for its relocation, and also the shared interest of keeping the market as a viable and healthy downtown asset. Farm Trails did state that research data showed a direct relation between the evening farmer market and evening farmers markets viability and their proximity to major vehicular traffic corridors and to other shopping and restaurant opportunities. This was due in their explanation to the fact that an evening market is more of a stop-off location versus a weekend market, which is more of a destination for shoppers. So I go over locations in my staff report that we had discussed with the Farm Trails folks. We looked at the Milton lot, Placerville Station, our bus depot, the Ivy lot, the trail behind the Ivy lot, and also the Fox lot. So the conclusions about the other locations are in the staff report. So I'll leave council and the public to take a look at those. But we looked at each location had its positives and negatives, but really the one that came up as the most suitable was the Fox lot, which is just west of the El Dorado Savings Bank. It's got the combination of the connection to the vehicular traffic that is important for the viability of the market, and also proximity, closest proximity that we could really look at realistically for the shopping and the restaurant options. So this location also has the space to provide either parking on site for farmers and vendors, or to provide shopper parking on the front half of the lot, depending upon which way we approach it with El Dorado County Farm Trails. So either arrangement would take some pressure off the street and the parking garage for other downtown visitors on those Wednesday afternoons. We also talked about timing of the transition to the suitable location, and city staff is recommending in this staff report that the move of the farmers market take place in June of 2024. The reason for this recommendation is it would allow the market to prepare and process of the filing for its new location and permitting with the state. It would also let them prepare with their vendors for the new location, provide them with more time for a setup strategy, and allow for the advertising during the 2023 season for the best possible transition once the market has moved. In addition, staff is currently working on a plan to repair the damaged private parking lot at the Main Street Tap House Restaurant through the city engineer's office. The dead-end nature of this parking lot also causes challenge for parking in the area, but once this lot is repaired, it will improve parking for the area. And we look at that taking time between now and next year. We also need to redo the contract. So staff is recommending a one-year agreement with the new location. Also request from the Farm Trails that seems very understandable as an allowance to advertise through hanging banners on the bell tower during the 2023 market season only. And then an allowance for an annual renewal based on mutual agreement. And a termination notification date of February 1st for each consecutive year. So we're looking at that. And so the 80% requirement that we were talking about, we're recommending that 80% of the booths be agriculture. And when I say as related and defined in state code, I'm not saying that farmers markets are required to have 80% agricultural based. I'm just saying that the term defined as agriculture would be the definition that the state uses for not ag versus non-ag. So getting back to the costs, there is another thing that I'd like to acknowledge. I had said in my staff report that the city would be paying for filings and permits. That's something that we discussed, but during our meetings, but we have not agreed upon that. So I wanted the council to be aware of that, we didn't make a formal agreement that the city would pay for those fees, but it is recognizable that there will be costs for filing and permits that are going to change the location. So as far as the costs go, keeping the market at the bell tower would also continue to create labor costs for my department especially, and that is the physical filling of the water barricades, which is cost a little over $300 per week. And that's 2 hours of labor for 3 maintenance workers, plus the minimal cost of water. So going back to the recommendation, I know there's a lot of parts to this puzzle, but going back to the recommendation, staff is looking to move the farmers market to the Fox lot effective June 1st of 2024, authorizing the use of the bell tower this year from June 1st through October 30th. And also requiring the farmers market to have a minimum of 80% agricultural related businesses as defined by state code, and having the city manager authorized to execute the agreement. And I can take questions at this point. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Terry, for that. Sure there'll be questions on this one, so I'll go ahead and look around and see who wants to go first here.
Well,
Yes,
I have a
Vice Mayor.
question about the maintenance workers. We talked about this was almost a little over $7,000 to the city taxpayers for the maintenance of having this. Are we proposing that the farmers market would pay for that? Or are you proposing that the city would pay for that?
I'm not proposing either right now. I'm thinking that it needs to be part of the discussion through the city council.
Okay, well, I'm not in favor for paying for those. Nor am I in favor for the $1,000 for the city to pay for this. I just wanted to state, last time they brought up that, Gary Pig had, searched them out and wanted this at the bell tower. And I always like to do a little bit of follow-up research when we talk about staff that's no longer with us and things that happened. And Gary, expressed to me that, yeah, he thought it was a good idea, but he also expressed that his conditions were 100% ag and not to use Stagecoach Alley. So those aren't exactly what are going on now either. So I just wanted the council to be aware of what those original intents and agreements were moving forward. I have a lot more thoughts, but I'll hold some of those back and let other people talk.
Thank you, Jackie. Yes, John.
Yeah, also, yes, and I want to echo what Councilmember No just said, but also, we talked, and I don't remember all of the lineage of the farmer's market, but my understanding, my recollection, having lived here a long time, is that there was a farmer's market before there in that location downtown, started back in the 90s, if I recall. And I thought it was on Wednesdays, but someone just reminded me that it was actually maybe on Thursdays. So, I don't know what happened in whatever, and why the city talked to the farm trails people at that time. But there was a farmer's market there before. So this idea that somehow they came in and did it. Now, I don't know if it stopped and then it was picked up again. Maybe, I'm sure someone amongst the long list of folks that's on the call list here, or potentially on the call list that's listening in, could probably help me with that. But there was a farmer's market there beforehand. And like I said, my recollection was when that one was up, you used to be able to still use the parking garage in the way that it was designed. That you could still make right-hand turns out of the parking lot and then a right-hand turn out onto Main Street. Now, I may be wrong about that, and if I'm wrong, I'm happy to acknowledge that. But that's my recollection of that original farmer's market that was there before this one. Thank you.
I have one quick question for John, since we're recollecting, and I think he's been around the longest. We did get some emails, and Patty Borelli had expressed that we had tried the Sunday market in the Fox lot, but that didn't work and it was moved, and I can't remember why. And I just want to know if anyone has any recollection on what the issues were in the Fox lot with the Sunday market.
I'm sure a very capable city manager has that. Yes, the recollection was it was the Fox lot and then the Tree Tall, whatever that one is over there by the post office. If that's the same one, is that the one you're talking about that moved back and forth a little bit? And yeah, I don't recall. My recollection was, but go ahead, Cleve. Why don't you recall for me? I have a recollection, but I'm curious about yours.
Well, I have to admit, before Jackie brought this up and before we got that email, I was trying to remember. I wasn't sure, but I do recall vaguely that we did start the Sunday market that was going on for a while in the Fox lot, and then it got moved to the T-Trot lot. I don't recall exactly why, but I know Sundays are very busy during the summer, and I believe there was probably related to parking was the reason for that. So I do, as I recall, they were also taking up the entire lot.
Mm-hmm.
And that was part of the issue. Even when we moved to the T-Trot lot, we had that concern because they didn't need the entire lot, but they blocked off the entire lot when it was in that. And so I think it was kind of the same issue with the Fox lot when they were there. One of the points that we wanted to bring up, that our recommendation also includes, is that initially, at least, and not potentially ongoing, is that the farmers market would, as Terry mentioned, would only use the back half of the parking lot with the front half remaining free for some sort of parking. Whether we decide that it should be for customers, or whether it's for the farmers that are there with their goods, and that can be open for discussion. Either way, it frees up that parking in the front half of the lot that could still be used for that purpose. So that's my recollection of how that went down.
I also remember having this conversation several years ago where we had many farmers markets on different days, and they sort of consolidated because I think they were also cannibalizing each other with essentially the same size and whatever amount of marketing or non-marketing that went on, that eventually ended up into a smaller amount of farmers markets throughout the city. So I think that was also in play. Terry, a couple of questions. What's the length of the Wednesday night currently? What's the length of it? When does it start? When does it end?
They usually start setting up around 1:30, and I believe they go till 6. So kind of a soft open around 2 to 2:30, and then it goes till about 6, and then they break it down.
Got you. And then what's the what month and what's the time frame of this market? I know it's not year round.
It's always been the first Wednesday in June to the last Wednesday in October. So I believe that would be the 4th, I think, of this year. I don't have a calendar in front of me, but
About 5 months.
correct.
Okay. And then what do you know approximately how many so on the Fox lot, let's just say the back half of the Fox lot, do you know approximately how many parking spaces that entails if we were to block that off for a Wednesday night, say from 1 to 6? Basically 1 till the evening, because by then
I counted them the other day. So I believe there's a little under 50 parking spaces altogether in there. So I would think 25 would be a good round number to look at what the space would be to occupy versus the space for parking.
I went and counted the back half, and there are 29 spots in the back half of the lot.
29. Okay.
Thank you,
Gotcha.
Jackie.
Thank you. And I just bring that up just because, we've had, before any of us were on city council, including John, the discussions and arguments over the every single parking space in the downtown area is incredibly valuable and needed by our brick and mortar Main Street businesses. This went even for when we were going to block off one. This when I was on city council, we were going to block off one parking space for a parklet, and this generated a petition as well as many people calling in about blocking one parking space. And then we had a similar conversation when we came back a couple of years after COVID and thought about maybe doing 3 outdoor dining that would be sort of a legacy thing, if you will, after COVID, about letting people have outdoor dining in the streets as we had it before during COVID. For I think it was 3. It was going to be a lottery. It was a different way it was going to be set up. Again, and then this city, not this city council, but the city council also had a discussion about losing parking spaces. That was 3. And this obviously would have been more ongoing. But again, I just want to lay out the fact that we've had a long decades discussion about parking spaces downtown and the value of them as we move forward on this and looking at public land to set up a private enterprise, which is, regardless of whether we like it or it's got the best intentions or anything else, about using public space for a private enterprise. So I just want to lay that out there as a foreground, if you will, as we move this discussion forward. And I'll save my rest of my comments for later.
I'd also like to suggest, because we'll get plenty of comments about this, I'm not so sure the Fox lot is usable as a parking lot unless you can maintain the circulation, because it's hard to get in and out of there. It's a tight parking lot when it's functioning as a parking lot. And I'm thinking if you took out those back halves, the only way that you'd be able, I'm not sure you could use it as a parking. It would be very difficult. I mean, I'm not saying it couldn't be. Even for the farmers market, it would be a challenge, because you'd have to have people that, I guess, a smart person could probably show it to me and show me how stupid I am and point out why it is doable. But just looking at it, it's hard to imagine that you could use that lot in that location. There's other places that whole configuration could work, but I don't see how I could continue to use it as parking.
It would be, I agree, it would be very tight.
It would be difficult, but someone could disabuse me of my ignorance, and I love that. Actually, I enjoy it. So if someone could do that, that would be great. Yes,
Vice Mayor.
I would just like to point out, when I park in that lot and I park it in the first row, I don't go out the second row. I come back out the first row. So don't really understand the argument there.
And I, like I said, I was just looking at it from the sky. And so I'm thinking that it might be difficult to, I don't know, I never do that. Whenever I park, I come out and I make a circle and I come out and do it to the left.
It's a difficult lot to park in with a big vehicle. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. Anyway, just a thought. I mean, like I said, I could be wrong and I'm willing to accept that.
Any other questions or comments for Terry at this point for staff? Otherwise, I'll go ahead and open up public comment.
Yeah, I got one thing, Michael.
Yep, go for it, David.
Yeah, thank you. So, and I agree with Jackie that the cost is quite a bit, but it's also my understanding that the cost we're spending was actually initiated by the city for a safety reason. Because was it not prior to that, we didn't have any of that cost?
Well, we probably had minimal costs for moving wooden barricades around and things like that. But yeah, the city did step up its physical barrier situation with the water barricades. And so that was not something that the market brought upon itself. It's something that just increased safety standards were the real motivation behind the water barricades.
Okay, so yeah, so I don't think I mean, as much as I don't want to see the city spending extra money that it doesn't have to, but I also don't think it's fair to use a city decision and cost against the farm trails because it's not something that they called out for, asked for, or wanted initiated. So at least my personal opinion, we're trying to take something that we did and, blame them for it. Obviously moving to the Fox lot cost wise is going to be much more minimal. Is it also my understanding that we've had direct conversation with them that they're okay moving this year or they're not okay moving this year?
I'll jump in there. We had a good conversation with them. Their preference would be to move next year. I'm not going to speak for them and say that they're okay moving this year, but I did caution them that despite what our recommendation was, they needed to be prepared that there was a good chance that it would be the recommendation to move this year rather than next year. They did not object and say, no, absolutely not. But I don't want to put words in their mouth. I would have to hear from them whether or not how that would work. So,
okay. And then on top of that, if we do decide that they stay where they're at for 1 year before the move, can we reclaim the alleyway and turn it back into access and either backing out or turning into the parking garage and leaving? Is that possible?
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend backing out. That had to have been a little tricky. I don't think we would recommend that. The option of allowing people, there's two options that I've observed. I'm not a traffic engineer, so I would want to talk to engineering about that. But one would be to, like you say, to allow them to pull into the parking garage rather than exit out onto Main Street. And then they would have to go out onto Highway 50. The other option that I've looked at that possibly could work would be to reverse the flow of the alley on that alley day so that they go into the garage, but then pull back out and go down the alley as they go out.
Okay.
Those are a couple options that I think could be considered if we were to say that we're going to eliminate use of the alley during the farmers market. But again, need more input perhaps from others that know the traffic better than me before I could commit to something like that.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to make one more comment on the water barriers. That's not a thing that the city decided to do. That was a direction from our insurance and liability. So,
okay,
when it's being imposed upon us, we're not just arbitrary coming up with these things.
Gotcha. Okay.
And when you see people plowing into folks now, unfortunately, on a more regular basis.
Yeah, and if I recall, it probably happened right after some of the people drove through markets in other areas. So it makes sense. I understand it.
I have no questions for staff at this time, and I'd like to wait on public comment before making any comments.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember Gottberg. Okay, I will then go ahead and open this up for public comment. And again, we're going to limit it to 3 minutes time on this so we can get everybody an opportunity to speak if they want to.
Michael, just so you know, I will have my timer going and it will make a noise when the 3 minutes is up. So
excellent. All right, that sounds good. Okay, we'll go ahead then and start with public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Public comment is now open for item 12.1. If you're joining by phone, select *9 to raise your hand, and you'll be called upon when it's your turn. And if you're joining by computer, you'll have a raise hand option at the bottom of your screen, and you can voluntarily state your name for the record for the minutes. We'll go ahead and start with Anton. Go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, thank you all for all the good jobs that you're doing. I guess I'm most associated with Terry Zeller and Cleve in terms of my employment with the Arts Council or Arts and Culture El Dorado. I was looking at an aerial map of the areas concerned from the Fox lot through the Bell Tower area, and I was wondering. I'm going to hazard that most people who go to the farmer's market are going to park in the garage or along the street as necessary. Has anyone considered that we might just use the top level of the parking structure, which is a very large and open area, not greatly populated by automobiles, for the farmer's market, and direct traffic or consumer traffic through the stairs, so that that way all of the Fox lot, the street, the alley, all those things remain clear. The farmer's market stays in business, and people get some exercise going up and down the stairs, benefiting their overall health as well as eating the good food that they get there. Thank you.
Thank you, Anton.
Okay, Kathy Lishman, go ahead.
Good evening. First of all, I wanted to say, make sure you can hear me.
We can, Kathy, loud and clear.
Okay. I have gone downtown on a Wednesday forgetting there was a farmer's market, and being able to park and walk along in the excitement on the street and be able to go to the store that I wanted to go to, and then to buy a few farmers market items on my way out. So because people were talking about different things, I wanted to mention that as someone who wanted to access a building downtown, I didn't have any problem. The last gentleman who just mentioned about upstairs, I think there would be a handicap problem. And it was also mentioned about the parking lot, the Fox lot. Right now, the Fox lot is one way in, and you go around to the back level, and then you're supposed to come out the first level to go out to the street. I think it would be very difficult to have the in and out traffic both on the level, not the level, but the part by the street. Previously, there was a farmer's market there on a Sunday, and it was a restaurant in the area that was concerned about taking up the parking there. So it was moved over by the post office. The restaurant actually is now gone, but I have a lot of questions. And one is there a way of limiting it to local farmers, or does it really matter whether it's farmers from out of the area or not? 1:30 to 6 on a Wednesday afternoon, in a parking lot that's usually very busy. Often I stop in that parking lot and go to the bank and then go to the post office and then come back. I just feel that a new survey needs to be done of the businesses in that area to see what they might think. And let's see, I'm trying to just not use more than my 3 minutes. Unloading, the farmers being able to unload and then take the back of the market, the entire parking lot would be unusable while they were unloading. And I just think that you've got to count on that parking lot being unusable from 1:30 to 6 p.m. on a Wednesday in the middle of the the week. And I think the Park and Ride is a great location because I think often people come to the farmer's market. I think you could just, people who wanted to come to the farmer's market might have no place to park, and you might lose a lot of customers. So it's just my opinion and my recollection of the past. Thanks.
Thank you, Kathy.
Okay, Ruth, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Yes. So a couple of things that organic market got pushed around to a lot of locations that had been there on Sunday at the Fox lot. And the situation there was they really didn't have enough vendors to make it viable. They didn't really get that critical mass. It's a select group of vendors, organic. It's organic produce. That's the O and the SOL, or if that's SLO, whatever. And I mean, I really like the woman who ran it, and then she ended up going down to the Marshall lot where the Marshall lab is, and did quite well, but I think it's folded. Again, she wanted local people, and our produce here comes later because of our weather than the produce in the valley. And so it's once farmers, hook onto other markets, it's hard to get, well, you know what I'm saying? She just had a hard time getting people with produce. So that was that one. And I want to say about the Fox lot that I drove it the other day, and I would like you to consider, instead of front and back, if you would consider east and west, because I would think logically, being an engineer, used to work for the Department of Transportation, the west end, that was closer to the tap house. If that end was for the farmer's market, and if when you came in, you did your halfway through and went out for the parking, you would have that same, 180 turn to come in and go out and park. And there aren't curb things there to prevent you from doing that, because I checked it out. So that's just something I'd like you to consider in east and west. And the other thing about parking spots is when you talk about something like a parklet or a restaurant, that is a permanent taking of a spot, which is very different than spots that are taken for a Wednesday afternoon. That's one day a week, one afternoon a week. And I really thought that the market was from 4 to dusk, like 4 to 7. And yes, they start creeping in and setting up early, but I'd never seen them setting up earlier than 2:30. So I don't know if that makes a difference, but I recall the hours as being a little bit different. So thank you for taking my call. I do support the market. I think there's always check gives and takes, and it adds to the sense of community. And we need that for our downtown, speaking as a merchant. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth.
Okay, just to give the attendees an idea where they are in the queue, we have Sue will be next, and then Tiff, Ryan Carter, and then Brittany. So Sue Rodman, go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
We can. Thank you, Sue.
I think that the farmer's market where it is at the bell tower is dangerous. It's dangerous for pedestrians. It's dangerous for drivers. And I see it as a real problem. I think they need to move this year. And I think that they would have to have the entire Fox lot, because exactly what Jackie said, if you go into that lot, you have to go around the circle and come back out. And to give them a place to unload and set up means that they have got to have pretty much the whole Fox lot. You can't divide it off simply because of the way the lot is designed and how people have to get in and out of that lot. It's very difficult unless you are in the front 2 rows closest to Main Street to come in and go out the same way. You can, but it's more difficult. And a lot of people just go around the circle. Also, has anybody talked to them about maybe moving over by the cinema where the Saturday market is? That's Vicini's property, but he has been very good to have the whole Saturday market there. And the Saturday market is doing very well. in that location. And I think that would be a better place. I also think the Mosquito Park and Ride would be a better place. And those two should, either one of those would be better than the Fox Lot or the current position where he is, where they are now. And they have 3 full months before it would open this year to advertise that they would be moving. I think they should move this year. Last year, when we heard this before, and that was supposed to be the last year, I was hooray, because then I didn't have to, I could go downtown on Wednesday. Now I just don't, because it's too risky. People go outside the barriers. They don't stay on the inside of the barriers. So it really doesn't offer them much protection, because the vendors are inside the barriers, but a lot of the people are around the outside, which puts them clear out in the traffic lane, which is dangerous. So those are my comments, I think. And for opening the alley to both two-way traffic doesn't really work. It's not wide enough to allow 2 lanes of traffic. It's only wide enough for 1. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Sue.
Okay, Tiff, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you. So my name's Tiffany. I own Sweet Pairings. I'm further down on Main Street, but I actually owe my whole business to the market. So I'm just kind of wanted to put my voice in, as a thank you to even hearing us out. I would personally like to see it, if it has to get moved to the Fox Lot, because that would be the easiest one for us to advertise, put up signs, post stuff, and just like let people know it's just, a few feet down the road. It's not, been moved where they actually have to get in their car and go drive somewhere else. And then if we did get to stay at the bell tower, that would give us a whole entire year to kind of get our client base used to the idea of we're not going to be here next year. To keep a lookout if we get to move to the Fox Lot, or if we have to move to a different location, we would have that time to build that relationship with our customers and let them know what is going to happen. And it really does hurt us when we do have to move. Like even within the market, I have moved twice at 2 different booth locations. Each time it does take me a week or 2 to like get people to realize, oh, I'm just across the alleyway, or I'm in the center of the market now. And to actually move a whole entire market, a lot of people would just assume that we aren't a market anymore and that the market doesn't even exist. Because unfortunately, being a businesswoman, I have learned people won't read the signs. They're not going to see, you get some, they are going to read them. They're going to look at, they're going to look at everything, and, they're going to go to wherever we are. But there's a lot more that aren't even going to read the signs. They're not going to go out and look for us because we're not within their usual habit. So at least that's my 2 cents, and consistency is key. So that's keeping it consistent for a little bit so that we can get the word out would help us.
Hey, thank you, Tiff.
All right, we currently have 7 attendees in line. Ryan Carter, go ahead.
Hi there, it's actually Ruth Carter. I'm on my husband's phone. So can you guys hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, great. So I am working with the farmers market, and a couple of things that I would like to bring to light are regarding the location. Location, right? I'm in real estate. So the best location, the most visible location, everybody knows when they come to Placerville location is the bell tower. Visibility and supporting the businesses around the farmers market is really important. That was, I think, the original spirit and intent of the city when they agreed to have the farmers market downtown at the bell tower. There's more money spent in sales tax for the city, and looking at other options. The park and ride is not visible. It's not going to support downtown businesses. People are going to go for the farmers market, which is great, and we love that. However, the byproduct and something that's a very big part of balancing is supporting our local downtown businesses and bringing those dollars in. And not every business is a brick and mortar business. And markets are just as important as the brick and mortar businesses. So the majority of folks that responded to the surveys, the businesses downtown, the ones that took the time to respond, were positive. I think that's being completely ignored. Is there a possibility for barriers? I know we're talking about what to do with this $80,000 bit of money with the cannabis fund. Maybe they could buy some barriers that are reusable barriers like we had maybe talked about before. They could use that money for when we do activities downtown, so we don't have to spend so much time, energy, and effort refilling water barriers and wasting water. The contract was written in a way that the farmers market was supposed to be notified in writing by February 1st if there was going to be a change that calendar year. That did not happen, period. So any change would have to happen next year, contractually speaking. And everybody has a copy of the contract, and if you read it, it's pretty clear. There are many different vendors from our tri-counties. I get, there's people from Auburn, there's people from Sacramento, there's people from all over. It is within the city's purview to approve or disapprove of vendors. And that is something that the farmers market would be more than happy and willing to work very closely with the city on, here's a new application. Maybe you want to look at approving or disapproving, but keep in mind, these people are making these products. So when you say, oh, they're selling the same stuff that they have down the street, that's not usually true because they're usually making the items that they sell at the farmers market. So keep that in mind. We can't advertise a change that quickly. And I think everybody has had enough time to drive the point home that we can't advertise, in June that we're going to be moving in July. That's just not possible. We need that year to be able to reach the customer base that frequents the market. So I think that was all of my points. I appreciate your time and I appreciate your consideration on this matter.
Thank you, Ruth.
Brittany, go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. So first I want to clarify that the market is actually from 4 p.m. till dusk or 8 p.m. because a couple people didn't know the actual times. I've been a farmer and artist at this market for the last couple of years. And one thing that I propose is that you actually take a vote this year for 2023 for the people that actually come to the farmers market, the people that support the local farmers and artists. I'm thinking that if there was a vote for those people that if they would agree for the market to stay or move, I think that would be really good if we could take like a vote for the townspeople, the people that come to the market and actually shop. I know that you had mentioned that you did a vote for the people that work at the businesses downtown, but I think that it would be also a really great proposal to take a vote for people that actually come and shop at the farmers market at the bell tower, the people of Placerville. That's all.
Thank you, Brittany.
Okay, caller with the last 3 digits, 525, go ahead.
Hi, this is Leo Bennett Koshan. I usually don't go to the Wednesday farmers market, just doesn't fit my schedule, but when I have, I liked it. Certainly am grateful that you're doing a supportive, collaborative, well thought out, but it's a lot of different interests that you're trying to weigh. I have also not had any trouble on Wednesdays when I'm doing something different in terms of finding parking. My only 2 additional comments are just in general. I've gone to other farmers markets, not in Placerville, but in El Dorado County, and been disappointed that, and I don't understand all the marketing and all that, but when the produce is coming out of those commercial boxes and is identical to what I can buy in a like Safeway, it's like that, for me anyway, doesn't feel like, hey, I'm supporting the local small farmers. And then I did help out with the Festival of Lights, and they had a shuttle system, and it certainly seemed to help in terms of having a more pedestrian-friendly, safe event. So thank you for taking my comments.
Thank you, Leo.
Caller, last three digits, 857. Go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So I do support the farmers markets use of public property with conditions. Generally, taxpayer costs should be recouped when public property is rented to a for-profit private entity. If it's just a few $100s of loss, that's one thing. If it's thousands of dollars, something's got to change. And a question, what happens to the water that is used to fill the vehicle barricades? Does it just get dumped on the ground? So we're just wasting hundreds, if not thousands of gallons a season. The top floor of the garage could be a possibility. Might have to have golf carts to haul, I don't know if any of them haul wheelchairs, or maybe half of the first floor of the parking garage, because the top floor is least employee parking. First floor, possible. Leave the alley open for deliveries to that Main Street business block. Has anyone looked at the city parking behind Old City Hall? It seems it would fit the existing market now. You could just pull a vehicle across the entrance as a barricade, not wasting water. A couple vehicles in the other end, not using up courthouse spaces, of course. You got a public bathroom right there, so I don't know what the problem is with Old City Hall parking. If the cost to the taxpayers is so much that it can't get recouped through the renting of public property, then that private entity really should find a private property solution, like the movie theater parking lot or the shopping center outside of grocery outlets. But yes, the actual cost of the taxpayers needs to come as close to a push on rental of public property. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Michael Williams, go ahead.
Okay, am I on?
You are.
Wonderful. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to thank you for your opportunity to speak here for a minute. I am a local resident. I walk frequently from my house on Coloma Street down across the parking garage into Main Street to support local business. It's one of the reasons we love living here and we use it frequently. There's lots of caveats, as I've found out from listening to you guys just now, that I was not aware of in terms of a private entity using public land. I agree there should be some sort of understanding about not abusing public trusts and funds for the furtherance of private business, but also being said, as a Main Street resident and somebody who's there frequently, there's something to be said about having this feeling of community and supporting your neighbors and local artists, especially being a musician myself, having somebody that's playing music while there's people selling their goods and products and services, and people make their livelihoods out of farmers markets like that. As we heard from Sweet Pairing, she's moved to brick and mortar because of being part of that sort of institution. So I would say that it would be pertinent to consider that we keep a very good relationship with our neighbors, and that we try to keep them in a maybe more towards the Fox lot side of things, to where they get an opportunity to have a smooth transition and be able to be close by to where the foot traffic is easily accessible. I know there's a lot of us that go down and walk back and forth, and used our public use sidewalks and that sort of things instead of just using cars to be able to enjoy our community. Besides that, I think that I don't think I have anything else to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, the next attendee is Wanshel. Please go ahead and unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
We can.
All right, perfect. I just wanted to say I'm one of the chefs on Main Street. I use the market extensively. I wanted to confirm it does start. It's 4 to dusk. It definitely creates a sense of community. We same people all the time. I know I'm not one of the only restaurants that buys from there. I see other restaurant people there buying. I think the location it's at is great because it doesn't take up parking from private entities. You have plenty of parking space there. I mean, like multiple people have said before, if you're not there for the market, there's still plenty of parking in that garage. Also, once people are on Main Street, they are shopping from brick and mortar. So and I can confirm too, because I talked to all the farmers, there is maybe one stand that isn't local. I can say all the other ones are 100%. They're all from either Camino or Placerville itself. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you for your comments.
Tammy Dans, go ahead.
Good evening, council members. Tammy Dans, longtime residents, homegrown. I think the mosquito bus station, as soon as the phase 2 is complete, I think that would be the best place for the farmers market due to there's amp parking, bathrooms, so wouldn't have to deal with portables, and easy access to the freeway. And we have the bike trail here in both directions and freeway access. So that's my thoughts. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Tammy.
Kirk Smith, go ahead.
Okay, is it working this time?
You are, Kirk.
Okay, so there are a number of things. I've always been a strong supporter of farmers markets, including the one downtown, except now. And there are many reasons. All the objections you heard at the last meeting were raised before you at least 2 years ago. It was supposed to have ended in 2022. They were skating on thin ice this last year, and yet they continue to expand. What does arts and crafts have to do with a farmer's market? What does snow cones and food trucks have to do with a farmer's market? Answer, nothing. When you have prime real estate like that, that's in short supply, that's not a good deal. Secondly, the problem of having this put to us in this fashion, where we have a deadline that's already passed, puts us in a bind. I can look at that contract and think of a number of ways where they breached it. So I still feel uncomfortable that we're put in that position. What changed me around was the issue of access to Robinsons for persons who need hospice assistance. My parents were in hospice care. And I remember the anxiety of waiting to get that medication. So I hear all kinds of remarks on the internet that were not supportive. They didn't recognize, they were not sensitive to it. So I talked for information, not from the owner of Robinsons. I went to the medical director of Snowline to find out about all the regulations and why it is that that place has a special contract. You'd have to live in a cave not to know that there's an opiate crisis in the country. So the regulations related to the products that they have for patients is very tight. The other thing that concerned me is the way the survey was done. It was very misleading. You know, from your conversations with merchants and from looking at the survey, you know that every merchant in that area had some strong concerns about it. The fundamental question was take it or leave it. Those who'd say take it ranged from love it to kind of benign interest. And on the other end, it ran a whole spectrum, but nobody in that area was really happy about it. And you've also learned in talking to some merchants that they'll never participate in something like that because it's bad for business. You don't have any of those merchants speaking tonight, do you? You're not going to. They changed their positions privately because it hurts business. So that was a turnoff. I didn't see anybody representing the interests of this group, let alone the management, say that crosses the line when you threaten boycotts, which we saw online. That's deeply troublesome. It's limited space. You could go down to the Fox right now. And as far as going around a full circle, put it on the west end and change the configuration. You have some of those barriers that stop the car in front of a parking space. You can move that around so that you could still have that loop, and it costs you probably less money than what you're paying for all these barriers and wasted water, et cetera. Those dangers. I think the other concern I have is about the idea this was never put out to bid. You've got a contract that's been around for 10 years and you never put it out to bid. There's been no cost of living increase. You've got all these expenses everybody's incurring. And last thing to tell you, if you have a merchant, I'm sorry, is that a timer?
Yeah, Kirk, you hit your 3 minutes. If you want to
Okay.
just hit your closing thoughts.
The closing thought is you have somebody who is selling at a vendor African baskets right in front of a brick and mortar store that's selling the very same product. That does not make good sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirk.
All right, caller with the last 3 digits, 146. Go ahead and unmute yourself. Caller 146, are you there?
146. All right, let's go to the next one, Regina. We can come back to 146 after that.
Okay, Lindsay McDonald, please go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
We can, Lindsay.
Okay, great. So I am a longtime resident and just a consumer on Main Street. I like, shopping local. I have small children I like to bring on Main Street, and I have family who are merchants on Main Street with multiple shops up and down from the bottom to the top of Main Street. I used to love going to the Saturday morning farmers market when it was on the bike trail. It was the perfect right off of Main Street location, in my opinion. I did it almost every single weekend, and since it's moved to the cinema parking lot, I've probably visited it maybe 2-3 times. The Wednesday night market, I think, is in a great location. If it has to be moved, I think it needs to stay on Main Street, as close to Main Street as possible. I spend so much money at local businesses. If there's a farmer's market, I end up going to the hardware store. I end up going to Bonkers with my kids. I sometimes will eat dinner at Cascada. I'll go to Scarlet Halo. I'll go to Panic and Swoon. I'm spending hundreds of dollars when I'm visiting on Main Street when the farmer's market is happening. And I feel like when you take that away, you're going to damage the income that is coming in because of people coming solely for the farmer's market who end up shopping at the local shops. I think it has a great community building aspect to it. I always feel like my kids enjoy it. I don't feel unsafe. I don't feel like I'm going to get hit by a car. And this is just coming from someone who is down on Main Street all the time with their children in a stroller. I feel like those points, which are in ways valid, I feel like they're being blown out of proportion. And I think that for how small our town is, I think that this is being made into a bigger deal than it has to be. I think it's in a great location now, but if it has to be moved, I don't think it should leave Main Street. I think it brings something really special to the people of Placerville and El Dorado County as a whole. And that's all I have to say.
Okay, caller with last three digits, 146.
Go ahead, 146. I saw you've unmuted yourself. One, 4, 6. Okay, let's go on
Yeah.
to the next. Oh, go ahead. We can hear you now.
Okay, I'm having problems hooking up here. Good evening, guys. My name's Mike Beals. I'm with the Beals Orchard, one of the vendors down there at the downtown market. We're a 4th-generation farmer here in Placerville, and we rely solely on farmers markets to sell all of our products, fruits, and vegetables. It helps support our families, provide fresh fruit and produce to local businesses, restaurants, and the residents. Farming's not easy. It's a lot of hard work. We deal with a lot of obstacles. We got weather, water, pests, cost of running an orchard. It's not always profitable. And now we're having to worry about market location. And it seemed like we've been doing that a lot lately. It's tough to survive when they're constantly moving us around. The Saturday morning market, one example, they moved us to the bike trail. We lost 50% of our revenue back there for a few years, and it pretty much killed that market. We moved to the movie theater. Things are a little better there. They weren't quite as good as the Ivy House was on that Saturday morning. So it's still not that great over at the movie theater. I know somebody opted or looked at sending us over there. It is location, location, location. Downtown has got a great location. It's one of our best markets we have. We do 5 of them. Do a lot of them down in Sacramento. I think we serve multiple purposes down there. We bring a lot of traffic in, a lot of potential business for the local shops. The market on a Wednesday afternoon is a great vibe. There's plenty of energy. It makes a great destination for local residents and visitors. We are probably the only market that I go to that is 90% local farmers. It just seems like we keep getting bounced around. Feel like we're getting pushed out. If I had my choice, I'd stay downtown. I'm not really interested in moving. I think if we move, it brings a negative impact. Families, the farms, town businesses, and the community that we're all trying to support. I believe it should stay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Greg Rockney, go ahead.
All right, let's see if I can figure this out. Sorry, I've been running around. My generator's died. I got about 4 feet of snow at my house right now.
We understand. Go for it.
Okay, can you hear me all right?
We can.
Okay, so I am part of the farmers market. I have Rockney Farms. I was part of the Sunday market when there was that Fox lot, and it was nothing but problems with businesses and parking, trying to have it open. We ended up having to close the parking because people kept just driving in and through our market, which is a problem that we've had with any market, and having a half open, half closed lot. Moving that market 3 times killed it. And so I'm opposed to moving the market for my business. I feed my family with this business. And I actually solely rely on the income from the Wednesday night market to feed my family. And I see a lot of benefits in meeting customers, a lot of people on Main Street, a lot of business. I shop at, all those businesses downtown. We come down, we spend money every Christmas. My kids love it, but it's, I don't know. I get hard feelings when I feel like we're unwanted. And I think that farmers markets are a beautiful thing in communities, and with everything changing and people moving up here and stuff like that, I think we really want to impress the rest of our county and have these things available in good locations that aren't going to kill them. So anyways, I got to get going on some other things tonight. So I appreciate the time and thank you very much.
Thank you, Greg.
Dan Catone, go ahead.
Go ahead, Dan. Okay, let's move to the next caller.
All right, Ben Hansen, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can. Go for it.
Hi, my name's Ben Hansen. I own 24 Carat Farm in Placerville. I'm not a member or I'm not a seller at the market. But I just I've been to many of these meetings and spoken a lot in support of these farmers markets. And I felt that over the years, I mean, the local ag has not really been treated that well by the city council. And I feel like I've seen so many markets die because they've been moved around. It's one of the reasons I don't do markets in town. They don't need more challenges. I just think that the location that it's at is really good. I know there are some challenges, and it seems like a better solution would be to try to fix those challenges than to move this market and then probably move it again in a couple years because of complaints that will happen at the Fox lot. So I just asked the council just to really consider how they really feel about supporting ag in this county. And is it not just something that you say, or is it something that you actually do? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Dan Catone, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Actually, I think he's for a different agenda item.
Okay. Last call for item 12.1. We do have one more. Shauna Hartzell, go ahead.
Hi, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Okay, well, I just want to say that I appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak to you guys today about this market and what it is for the community. We don't want to be the problem child that we are being accused of. We just want to be able to exist in a location that does not cause us sudden death by banishing us from Main Street. Not just anyone can open a farmer's market. You have to be a non-profit organization, a certified farmer, or a government entity to start and run a farmer's market. There's 48 pages of rules from the Department of Agriculture on direct marketing that you have to follow, along with health codes, health permits, business licenses, egg handlers licenses, USDA inspections, state reporting, health department inspections, state inspections, ABC licenses, and county inspections. So it's not just the, open it up and go for it. Studies conducted by the California Federation of Farmers Markets and the University of Davis say it takes 5 to 6 years for a new market to become established and form a community of customers. These studies really know what they're talking about because in 2013, El Dorado County Farm Shows made a whole $12 profit from hosting this market. I don't mean to brag, but there was applause in the boardroom that day because until then, we lost money every single year. Having to appear before the city council and having you discuss the farmers market has opened my eyes to the fact that people out there don't like us. People think that we interfere with their daily life. We make it hard for them to find parking spot in the front of their favorite store. Our market has been accused of stealing business from local merchants, being greedy, being heartless, hurting the local businesses, and making it impossible for dying people to get their medications. I have seen people get in heated discussions about the tragedy and hurt that people say we cause. I admit this negativity hurts. I've been in tears after being screamed at by a local merchant and told nobody wants you here. I've had another merchant yell at me and say that the farmers market is taking away all of my business and that we attract the wrong kind of people with the benefits that we distribute. meaning the EBT benefits that we give to the locals. In 2007, the city of Placerville and the Placerville Downtown Association contacted El Dorado County Farm Sales and asked us if we were to start an evening farmers market in downtown Placerville. We were asked to create a community hub for people to gather downtown, do their weekly grocery shopping, shop at the local businesses, and eat at the local restaurants, and foster a relationship that connected our community to their downtown. We discussed all the aspects of what they wanted to bring to downtown, and we tried our best to comply with what the city and the PDA wanted. We are now aware of the haters out there, and we are sorry for the problems that we have caused. We mean no harm. We only wanted to do good. There's over 700 certified farmers markets in California. They give consumers the ability to obtain farm fresh produce and vegetables, to travel a shorter farm to table trip, decrease retail leakage by giving locals ability to purchase directly from a family farm. You can obtain coachable, specifically fruits and vegetables that are not easily available at supermarkets, and it supports the purchases of local products, which strengthens our local
Donna,
economy.
you
Yes,
hit your 3
I'm
minutes.
almost,
You
I'm
wanted to,
almost done.
okay, thank you.
Okay. During COVID, our farmers market was essential, and we were encouraged to stay open where other businesses had to close their doors. In 2020, we handed out over $10,000 worth of CalFresh, WIC, Senior Farmers Market Nutrition Programs, and Market Match benefits. 2021, we did $11,000. 2022, we did $12,000. We plan on distributing over $13,000 of benefits in 2023. When our county
Right.
was
Thank
devastated
you,
by fires,
Shauna. Thank you, Shauna. Appreciate it.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, we have Dan Catone, but as I understand, you thought he was speaking for another item.
Yeah, I think he's has his hand up for a different item.
Okay, in that case, we do not have any other hands raised. So,
All right. Thank you, everybody. And thank you for all the public comments on this issue. We'll go ahead and close public comment and bring it back to the council for further discussion. Let's see if anyone wants to lead off here first, or if there's any. First, I'll go back. Anything, I guess, Terry or Cleve, anything you want to clarify that you heard from public comments before we go into further discussion? All right, seeing none. All right, council.
All right, I'll take a stab at it. It's always a difficult thing. We're trying to balance the needs of the entire community, not just one portion or the other. Last council meeting, we gave direction to find another location and a transition plan. And if the council's still amenable to that, I'd like to continue that conversation and move this conversation forward. There were a couple other locations brought up tonight, the top of the parking garage, the other, let's discuss all those locations. And I'd like to see us move this conversation where we were headed. Where are we going to move the market? And that's how I'll start this.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
Yes, I agree with Councilmember No. We don't hate the farmers market. I can't speak for 4 other human beings. They have agency and minds of their own. I don't hate the farmers market. The idea that somehow the concerns that are given to us by some of the merchants on Main Street are being overblown or no, these are genuine concerns. We have to listen to them just like we're listening to everybody that spoke tonight. One parking lot that didn't get mentioned, and I thought about it the other day, is the parking lot that is between, what the restaurant formerly known as Tortilla Flats, Hangtown I don't know. Anyway, I'm sorry, I'll just mess that up. And the Soda Works. That's a city parking lot, right?
Yes, that is. That's the Mooney lot, John.
Thank you very much. Is there some reason why this lot never gets talked about? Because it seems to me, the restaurant formerly known as Tortilla Flats has a parking lot on one side. Even if you took that entire parking lot, there's still the Ivy House parking lot across the street. both the sandwich place and Sweetie Pies are breakfast and lunch restaurants, if I recall. Why doesn't this lot get mentioned? Tell me why.
I don't really have an answer for you on that, John. It just didn't come up in the conversation. We've tried to look at what we thought were feasible. I think probably the reason was that if we were going to move it up to that area, we would look at the Ivy lot rather than that lot, but only because of where it was used in the past, I guess. But I don't have a good reason for that. So.
And that lot does make some sense too, from my perspective, John, because Ivy lot, yeah, we could definitely do Ivy lot, but there may be changes to the Ivy lot coming up. So you're talking about, and we've heard plenty of testimony, and I have no reason to disagree with, the more you move something, the harder it is for it to establish itself. Common sense that the more it gets moved, that the harder it is to retain and to attract new customers. So I get all that. Wherever the forever home is, makes sense going forward. And so that one does, keeps you on Main Street. My personal opinion is still, where it's a bit of a whack-a-mole that you move it from one place, you have unintended consequences somewhere else. So whether it's Fox lot, Mooney lot, Petrol, third floor of the parking space, there's always going to be some business or somebody in those areas that think that that's going to affect them in a disadvantaged way. And, this was one of the first times where we actually had businesses willing to say something. And then I think a couple of people that called in said, then they got, that they were going to be, people weren't going to go to their stores anymore because they were not supportive of this. So it's hard, I think, for people to even come forward and say, this is not good for my business where it's at. And so, I did take that into consideration when I heard this, because everybody around, well, not everybody, but some of the stores around the bell tower did not like where it was at, that it hurt their businesses. And as we've heard for plenty of times, whether it's this or different things, and this has also been the reason why we cut back on parades and antique fairs and other things on Main Street, was because the businesses overwhelmingly didn't like the fact that when we closed the street down, it hurt their businesses. And so this is not necessarily the same thing, but along the same lines of talk. So,
right.
We've been having this discussion in one way or another for a long time when it comes to closing down Main Street.
Right.
Yes, it's a great place to be, but there's always consequences of having people in that public space on Main Street.
Right. And there are businesses on Main Street, some of whom voice their discontent, who actually pay rent to be on Main Street. We talk about this prime location on Main Street. Yeah, people buy buildings on Main Street. They pay rent on Main Street. That's why they do it. And, I guess there was a question brought up, and I actually, when I read the lease, I saw this clause. So maybe our attorney would like to weigh in on this idea that of this February 1st date, because the answer to my question on that will then precipitate further comment. So potentially, so go ahead.
And I'm sorry, what is your specific question about that clause?
There's something in the lease that says that they have to get notice of some sort of change in whatever by February 1st. Obviously, it is not February 1st anymore.
Yes, I think, the question would be that I think that someone made the comment of, no matter what we do, we couldn't change it out of the location that it is because of the contract.
Right.
Because of that February 1st date.
Right, I'm looking at section 1 and the terms, and it does say that the lease term for each year shall commence on the first Wednesday in June upon the same terms, unless either party serves written notice to the non-terminating party of their intent not to renew this lease by February 1. I think I'd have to know a little bit more about the extensions, given that the original lease terminated. Actually, no, I'm sorry. I have not reviewed this in advance of tonight's meeting, so I would need to take a look at it. And and see if there's any default provisions, which I can do right now while you all are talking.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, so I guess I want to know from the other council members, objections or thoughts on Mooney Lot.
Jackie, can I speak up on Mooney Lot real quick?
Yes. Oh yeah, staff, that'd be great if you have thoughts too.
There is some advantages to it in the fact that it is a shady spot. It's where I put my car a lot of times in summer heat when I'm at work. The disadvantage of it is there is quite a bit of planting that kind of obfuscates or blocks the view of it. And there's also only about 25 spaces in that lot altogether. So it is, of any of the lots, it's probably the one that would be most difficult for mobilizing and demobilizing a farmer's market. Those are my comments.
Terry, I did have a question for you. How many vendors are currently operating? How many booths or vendors? Not sure how we count it, but things that we have at the Wednesday. I'm just wondering how much space.
I had talked to Shauna about that, and I failed to write down how many we had at the last season. So that's something that I would probably have to reach out to her about.
Got you. And then do we have, and this might be part and parcel of the same question, but did we have any sense of what the produce, the farmer's market portion of this is versus artisans, hot food, other things, wine, anything that's not actually fruit and produce?
Yeah, the reason for the 80% was just kind of trying to keep the same percentage that they're used to dealing with, because we did have an in-depth conversation about the produce versus the non-ag folks and how they complement each other. And I believe that we are right around the 20% mark for the non-ag versus the ag as far as percentage goes. And that's why that number carried over in the discussions of the ag to non-ag. But I do know from the El Dorado Farm Trails that they had some heartburn with setting a particular hard percentage limit on that, just because when they try to constitute their market every year, that's an additional hurdle that if it was a hard number, it might be difficult to constitute with the amount of participants that they have that do ag versus non-ag.
Okay. I guess that begs the question then, if there's always more, that there's obviously more non-ag people then? I mean, if you're having a hard time reaching that number, then I'm just thinking it's a fairly close.
Well, I'm talking about percentages. Say if you had 30 vendors and 5 of them were non-ag versus having 15 vendors and 5 of them non-ag, then your percentage goes way off. That was the percentage conundrum as far as that goes.
Right. Then I goes to the whole viability as well, though. I'm not sure. I have to. I mean, if you're that teeter-tottering on whether or not you're viable, that's the whole other question.
Yeah, I think it was just the discussion of, if they have one non-ag person that puts them over their limit, does it void out the contract if we have strict language?
I mean, I think there's some common sense that would be about, like, if someone didn't show up one day, like 2 vendors didn't show up, that's not going to be like, oh, you're done. But if consistently over 5 months, you have 40% of the people that are not, and that's another story. And I think that's just a common sense way of enforcement, not that you have to have language that's some parameters, but it doesn't mean you can't work within common sense to do that.
Yeah, I think that's what we were talking about, would be language that would be more that you would be having targets of 20% and 80% as a goal for the market each season.
Okay. Well, and I mean, to get back, it may be more difficult to set up. I still think Mooney would be a potential option. I'm also great with doing it at Mosquito. And, you know, you could have as many different things as you wanted to at Mosquito. Whether you wanted to have, we could probably even forego having a 80-20 split there, because you have a lot more room. You can be able to do more things and make it more of a destination as you're going forward. And that could be a forever home, because there wouldn't be any need to change them out from that location. So I would also consider, you know, looking at that lot. I just think Fox is going to end up being a problem down the line as we move forward. I could be dissuaded of that, but I think you're just moving it from one spot where you have angry businesses, where you're going to move it to another spot and have the same thing. Even some of the callers said that, you know, they've experienced that in the past. So I don't see any reason to believe that the future wouldn't pretend to have the same outcomes if we move it to a lot that's also has fairly a lot of people. I will say the one thing I like about Mooney is that you do have Ivy right across the street, and then you have private parking for Hangtown Cantina.
Yes, thank you.
That is now adjacent to that as well.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and comment on that as well. I do think the Mooney lot as a long-term solution is more preferable to the Fox lot or the Ivy House lot. I too still think the Mosquito lot as a long-term destination market is ideal. If we're going to allow, you know, public property for a farmer's market, there's tons of room there to grow. And, you know, I think the city's intent when we originally allowed a market on public property and asked for the market was that it would be a destination market, that it would bring people downtown that wouldn't otherwise be going downtown. Like, that was the intent. And so now we're hearing it's not a destination market. It's a stop-off amenity market that essentially relies on the traffic that's already downtown and the brick and mortar business that are already on town to be a viable market. So I think there's sort of a question of what is the objective of the market, and is it the best use of public property and, you know, best beneficial use. I certainly want to support local ag. I would like to allow, you know, farmers markets on public property, but I don't want it to have safety concerns, which I certainly think the Bell Tower location does, or, you know, large costs to the city, which also the Bell Tower does, or impacts to our brick and mortar businesses, which, you know, I think the Fox lot certainly will have. You know, my concerns are with that. I think, you know, the Fox lot we're in the downtown Barking district. Our brick and mortar stores have paid in money to the city for the public parking there. So taking away those parking spots during normal business hours of most of these businesses is a pretty big concern on my part. So, you know, I think if it moved to the Fox lot, I feel like it would be
Perfect. Okay. It is 7:47. We are going to go ahead and reconvene the Placerville City Council meeting. And on item 12.1, we're in the middle of discussion, I think, when the power went out. I don't remember where we left off, but we were talking about Mooney Lot as well as Mosquito and any other, you know, we were kind of going around the horn on concerns and thoughts. So I'll open this back up. You know,
Nicole was the last person I remember talking when the power went out.
Yeah, same here.
So Nicole, you want to
finish those thoughts.
Your thoughts again, or finish them, or refresh them, probably.
Yes, I will try. I guess a recap. I'm open to the Mooney lot or the Mosquito lot. I think that the Fox lot and the Ivy lot are both locations that we would potentially be moving them again. And I don't think that's a good thing to the market to, you know, move a market multiple times. You know, I also think with the Bell Tower, there are concerns about the, you know, safety. I certainly don't want us to continue in a condition that could be unsafe. I don't want anybody getting, you know, hit by a vehicle.
And I also don't want the cost to the city that seems to be associated with having to put up water barricades or the waste of water or any of those other concerns. So my preference is to move the market sooner rather than later. So that's sort of where I'm thinking at the moment.
Right. Thank you, Nicole. And that's, I
Okay.
mean, it's kind of where I'm at. Does someone just come in? I'm sorry if I spoke
No,
over.
no, you're good. Go ahead.
No, I'm good. Go ahead. Go for it, David.
Okay. All right. So, I mean, I think the mosquito lot would probably put them too far away from downtown. It would end up becoming just something that else going on. And I think we're going to be missing out on the downtown business that it does bring. Because that's one of the things that we keep talking about as a downtown business, but we have no measurement on how much downtown business they actually bring in. They were started for that reason to begin with. Now, as last meeting, John said, we have a ton of business downtown these days. But compared to when it was started to now, downtown has changed immensely. I think it would be a great loss, if we lose literally our last downtown farmers market. We lost the two others that we had. The Sunday one's gone, then we had the Saturday one, and now they're way over on, by the cinema. I think we'd be kind of doing a disservice not only to downtown, but to our city and to our community, because it is one of those things that brings in that community feel for Placerville. That's one of the things that a lot of people talk about, a lot of people like. Yes, I do know that we have merchants that don't like it. As of the survey, we have merchants that do like it. I think we're going to have that argument regardless of whether it's in the Fox lot, the Ivy lot, or the Mooney lot. I kind of like the Mooney lot idea because just the way everybody's talking about it, it's a nice location. It's, a smaller lot, but at the same time, you still have all that extra parking around the area. So that should help out a bunch. I mean, at least at that point, we're not taking one whole lot over and then there's really nothing around it to, absorb anything. So I do remember the Saturday market. I mean, my wife and I, my mother, we visited that every weekend as long as we were in town, and it brought a ton of people downtown. I mean, Sweetie Pies was packed all the time when that was going on. The local restaurants, the little markets and stuff, a little business from that. So I can't imagine that the farmers market isn't bringing business to downtown. So if we could, unfortunately, we don't have a measurement of what that is. What are they coming downtown for? I would highly recommend that the farmers market themselves, if they're staying in the place this year or we move them regardless, they should be surveying how many people they're bringing into downtown just to help us get a better idea and them get a better idea on how effective they really are. So, but the only other thing that my concern would be is checking with Mona on the contract, whether or not that we have the right to move them right now or not. I think as a city and as a council, we'd be better off in good faith and honoring that February 1st marker, if that's what it truly is, and having them where they're at for the one more year, give them the time for the advertising, getting the clients used to being able to move, and, then get them to the lot that we decide on. But I think we still have some questions out there, and I don't know if we're going to get them solved tonight.
Well, I'm not opposed to the Mooney lot either. I know that it's smaller and maybe we move to an ag only, a produce only market, which is what all the merchants and everybody are saying that they really like about it and want about it. It's what it originally was. The one concern I have is we're not talking about the new store called The Market right across from the Mooney lot. And that, will it hurt them, but will it help them by bringing them more attention as a new business that's recently opened on Main Street? I don't know. I mean, we talked about moving this 2 years ago, and then we let them stay last year. And now, the fact that they haven't done anything to prepare to move, knowing that this has been part of the conversation, I'm less sympathetic towards. We've been having that. There's been emails. Terry's been talking to them since last fall. This feels like another stall tactic. and the things around the bell tower, we still haven't solved the commercial parking. I mean, we have one commercial parking for all of Main Street, and with the market at the bell tower, it takes that up. And yeah, the market's from 4 to 8, but they started, at 2, and now it's 1:30, and it's a much longer part of the day than just 4 to 8 for that market. Along with the added costs, which I have a hard time with. I don't know. I would be amenable to moving them to the Mooney lot.
Mayor Saragosa?
Or Terry, I saw you both go off mute, so whichever one wants to go first, sir.
I just thought I would throw in when we were on break, I went ahead and I measured the lots. So it looks like the Fox lot is around 18,500 square feet and has 52 spaces, and the Mooney lot is around 13,000 square feet with 32 spaces.
Well, we were originally talking about half of the Fox lot, which was 29 spaces. So it's essentially the same space that we were talking about giving them at the Fox lot, only we'd just be closing off the entire lot.
Were you going to add?
The only thing I was going to mention just quickly, Jackie, there is actually another commercial spot parallel parked in front of the on the south side of the street, right about at that same location, a rather large yellow curb that's for commercial parking. So there is other commercial parking available, which would be eastbound on Main Street, right at that same location.
Thanks, Clay.
One quick question, Terry, you might know the answer to this. When it comes to the Mooney lot, there used to be a hair salon right there in that building too. Is that still there?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Which is direct access.
That's correct. The doors open right into the parking lot on that side of the building.
Okay. And being in the hair salon business, they are open on Saturdays, Wednesday nights. So that could cause another issue.
Yeah. I mean, and this is why I go back to what I originally said is it's a little bit of a whack-a-mole. You move people around to any of these lots. There's always going to be someone's not going to like it. I can tell you that. I can guarantee you there will be somebody that will not like it, probably a business that will not like to have their business impeded by something for whether it's 4 hours, 6 hours, whatever it might be. And I understand that. Like if I had a business on Main Street and the front of my business got blocked for 6 hours and the parking around it got blocked for 6 hours once a week for 5 months, I probably am not going to like that all too much.
Right.
I mean, I don't think that's anything that's, that's just no great like mystery that would happen.
Yeah, we're definitely going to be dealing with the not in my backyard issue for no matter where we go.
Yeah. The hair salon you're talking about is open till 5 on Wednesday. I was just looking at their hours.
Okay.
They're open every day till 5. So we could get that farmer's market to stop setting up so early. It might not be such an impediment.
Yeah, I mean, really, the only location that's not an impediment to other people is Mosquito. Otherwise, there's always going to be somebody that's impacted by having a lot and places blocked off. That's just, we have to make that decision of whether we think there's a spot that's less severe than the others. But there's always going to be a downside to it.
Mayor Saragosa, if I can just respond to the question here about notice. It's not entirely clear because the agreement does not contemplate, the agreement contemplates termination, but it doesn't contemplate amendments. And so if you wanted to just terminate the agreement, the city would have had to provide notice by February 1st. My understanding is that staff did meet and articulated the bases for making modifications to the terms and conditions of the lease as of January 7th. And that happened in a in-person meeting. And there was also email correspondence that occurred after. Again, the basis of those communications, again, from my understanding, was not a straight termination, but was a modification. And the agreement is silent on that aspect of it. It really focuses mostly on termination.
Gotcha. So it's a little as clear as mud right now then.
Yeah.
Pretty much. I mean, it's one of those situations where it's not considered. And so, but I believe we can go in two different ways. On the one hand, you can argue equities and say why you'd like to, continue it for another year. On the other hand, staff did meet well in advance of the February 1st meeting, and it was a personal message that was conveyed to them, and there were subsequent email communications in writing to them. So I think that you can make the case for either.
Understood. Thank you. Yeah, I feel like I'm on pretty good ground with all of the staff communication, not to mention last year's city council meetings where we discussed this at length as well. So this isn't anything new that just popped up that came out 2 weeks ago on our last city council meeting. So I feel like I'm in good place. All right, so we've talked a lot. Where would we like to go with this? Does anyone have a suggestion on a motion at this point?
I'll take a stab at a motion. How's that?
That sounds good.
Propose.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
And these are some points that we haven't talked about, but I had kind of put down for discussion too. So we can, discuss this motion further, but I'll make a motion that we move the Wednesday market to the Mooney lot, starting this year in 2023. I'd like to see it 100% produce. I think that's the spirit of what it is and what people are looking for, but we could talk about that. All other events we require to provide bathrooms, and that was another issue down at the bell tower where all the merchants were being impacted by their bathrooms being used. It seems like we should require them to provide bathrooms. Otherwise, you're going to have the same problem at that end of town where they're going into everyone else's bathrooms, and there aren't that many. So probably the businesses are going to be impacted even more. I'd like to see the market cover all their costs, whatever the costs are to the city, staff and otherwise, that, we're not picking up all those costs. And yeah, that's what I have.
Okay.
I have a question about the bathrooms. And it might have just been because there was like a special event or something, but it seemed like portable toilets did sort of pop up down there. Terry, did the farmers market ever provide those, or were those there for other reasons and they just happened to be around, or maybe they were never there and I made that up?
As far as I know, John, the specific provision for the farmers market with porta pots did not happen either by the city or by El Dorado County Farm Trails. I believe
I know if you're going with that, John, because I remember seeing them right next to the
right there.
Placerville
You kind of come down the stairs, yeah.
Yeah.
So were they required to have them?
It's not required in their contract.
Oh, okay, fine. Thank you. All right.
Yeah, I'm trying to add that because we require that of all other events, regardless of Main Street Trail or otherwise.
Sure.
Yeah. And I do think you're right, Jackie. At that location at Mooney, you're further away from any public restrooms, down the ways. So you'd have to have porta potties. I'm trying to remember, did we have porta potties at the Ivy lot when the Saturday markets were there?
No. And I look.
We did, just one second, John. We did not have porta potties when they were in the Ivy House lot because they had made some arrangements, I believe. But when they moved them across the trail, they did have portables. I think we even required them to have, one way or the other, they did have portables when they were over on the trail.
So no one's going to bring one in and take it away. once a week for 5 months. So it would just stay there, I'm assuming.
One of the things we worked with the Saturday Farmers Market was they were on the trail behind the Ivy lot, but they also had space on the other side of Clay Street, closer to Town Hall. And we did experiment with providing them with access to the restrooms in Town Hall.
That's what I was just thinking. I wonder if that would be an option rather than having a portable toilet sitting out there for everyone.
Yeah, or just having them to a certain hour and let everyone know, you know, they're open till 6 and then, you know.
Yeah.
It's functionally possible to do that, yes, as long as there's a chain of responsibility with the keys and things like that.
I would, okay.
Okay, so with this motion, are we talking about writing up a whole new contract for him?
No, I'm talking about being specific though, so that future councils, like right now, we're grappling with what the past did and it's not specific. And I'm just trying to be more specific so that future councils can say, hey, this is what they intended, this is what they meant.
Okay, yeah, I agree with that. I would definitely like to see some language in there on, you know, hard dates and notices instead of just conversations and email, because I think that can be argued. I would rather see it to a point where it can't be arguable, because right now, personally, I'm with the Mooney lot, but I'm kind of disagree on the moving them this year, just due to the fact that what's that going to look like to the public and to the community if we have a questionable contract and we're just, you know, booting them from one place to another. So that's the only part I'm having a hard time with. I would rather see a contract that's set and, you know, had some hard language in there, and then that starts with the new year of 2024.
Well, yeah. The challenge is that the agreement as it sits right now, because I read through there, it's kind of a blade that cuts in both directions. You know, farm folks will say, well, this February, well, the one gal did. She goes, well, this February 1st, and they're kind of saying, well, that's it. But my guess is this: that did they ever get, Terry? Did they ever get in writing having amplified music being played there at the farmers market?
The way that the market contract was renewed when I inherited it was through special event permit. So, and they spelled out things in the permits, and I'd have to dig those up specifically to see about the music.
Yeah, I would say I'm comfortable with the fact that there was a public meeting that, you know, El Dorado Farm Trails attended last year, that the city council gave pretty clear direction from my recollection of being at that meeting to, you know, have 2022 be the last year it was allowed at the bell tower, and then the subsequent conversations by staff, emails, all prior to February 1st. So for me, I'm comfortable with moving it this year. And I also feel like there are safety concerns, there are costs to our taxpayers, and I don't think we should allow that to continue for another year. So I certainly want to see it move this year. I think, to me, that's important. I'm more free on where it moves to and what the terms and conditions on it are set in its new location. So, you know, I think the Mooney lot seems like we're all sort of aligning, and that may be the best location. I'm open to the discussion on porta potties required or not, 80% ag versus 100% ag, or 90%, or somewhere in between. So that's sort of where I'm landing. And I am willing to second this motion since we are discussing it, so that you've got a second on it.
Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you, Nicole. Okay, so we do have a first and a second. And Jackie, just for the sake of conversation, can you just repeat it? Just so we have all the items there.
Okay, so we're saying the Mooney lot, we're saying this year, 2023. I had said 100% produce. That was a point of discussion. I had mentioned the bathrooms, but I'm fine with negotiating at town hall if that seems like a reasonable thing. And the last thing I had is that they need to cover all costs. I think all events across the city, we need the events need to cover their costs. You know, everybody says I have a great, you know, I'm 501c3. As I've said, there's over 300 501c3s in El Dorado County. There'll always be a good reason for someone to waive fees. And if we were a rich city and we could do it, I would love to do it, but that's just not the case.
Okay, thank you. All right, we have a second on that. Is there any Cleve, you had a thought?
Just one more thing that perhaps I would suggest you respond to. The current contract and what we've currently done, the charge for the use of the lot has been $50 a month. Is that correct, Terry? Yeah. So are you comfortable with that when you're talking about covering costs? I would just like to hear any comments you may have on that and
I don't think that we've been presented on what those ongoing costs will be. So I'm just asking for that contract to cover the ongoing costs. At the Mooney lot, you're not going to have the water barrier. So a lot of that money is going to be gone. But, you know, I've sat on Park and Rec and I've looked at all the events and they always want the city to cover something. And I'm just adamant that, you know, these events all need to cover their costs, whatever those are.
The question always comes up when you're talking about using parking spaces too and loss of revenue and whether or not you want to take that into consideration.
I'm not considering that.
No.
I'm considering staff time, setup, takedown, whatever that we need to do to assist them. I was not considering the loss of parking spots.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Okay.
So I guess to kind of put a pin in Cleve's question, $50 a unit, whatever, a month, whatever it is.
A month. It's $50 a month. Yes.
That's fine. Jackie, you're talking about like all those other costs that are put on the city in order to support something that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Okay. Right.
Which it really should come down quite a bit because the safety features won't have.
I expect it'll probably only be a couple $100 more, but I'm just specifying, let's cover those costs. And I just feel that's a policy we should be doing with all events.
It's one of those ironies of ironies in when you sit in these chairs. And that is everybody always tells you that you need to run the government more like a business until you decide to start doing that. And then they always look at you and tell you that you're a hard-hearted idiot because, you know, you're not giving stuff away. And I agree with you. I think that these costs should be covered. And there'll be a huge reduction because the way it was sounding, if we had actually if we asked them to pay for the water-filled barriers, my guess is their viability would have been fairly significantly challenged down at the bell tower.
Mayor, if I could, just one more comment. I would like to comment that, you know, this lot was not at all discussed with them in our discussions.
We are.
We understand that.
We're basically negotiating from the dais. I wonder if maybe
that's what we've been doing the whole entire time though. So I'm not too concerned about that. I mean, this is what we were given by staff and this is what we're now actually doing. So thank you, but that's okay.
All right.
I agree that we should get some, well, I mean, I guess if they don't agree with this, then I don't know what else I guess maybe what we ought to do is, are there alternatives to what we're presenting? For example, mosquito. You know,
if they would rather be at Mosquito, I would be fine with that.
Yeah. If the backstop is Mosquito as an alternative, I'm okay with that as well.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
I'm open to that as well. I'm open to say Mooney as the, you know, or Mosquito, whichever is the preferred of those two.
Yeah, and I would, so as a friendly amendment, I would just add that that as a backup plan, if this was not agreeable, that the
Mosquito
lot would be a backup location. And at that location, I actually don't have a 80-20 or 100 or 80-20 rule. They could, you know, roll out what they wanted to up there.
I'll amend my motion to include that.
I'll second the amendment. I also think there's no bathroom issue if it's up there. So that's also a benefit. that cost, if we're talking about it, wouldn't be an implication.
We do, Rebecca, can you give us a sense of when that location is going to be complete? I know this may not sync up exactly.
Or at all.
Thank you. Yeah. So we are going to be starting construction in the next couple of weeks, weather pending, and it takes about 2 to 3 weeks for us to finish that. So I do want to just kind of call attention to the fact that that lot will be under construction over the next couple of months.
Gotcha. And we're talking about, do you anticipate that by June it would be complete?
Possibly.
Just depends on weather, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Understood. Okay, one other wrinkle, but I think it's still within reason.
Yeah.
So, and if they decide they don't like either?
Then they don't have one. It isn't our job to create the perfect environment for this farmer's market.
Okay.
It's our job to balance the needs of both our brick and mortar and what's in the best interest of the city.
Also, private property is always an option. We allow it by temporary use permit, so they could go to any private property owner in a business district in the city and work out an arrangement with the private property owner if they don't like the public options.
And council, just so I'm clear, are you directing staff then to draft a new agreement to be entered into that sets forth the terms that you've discussed?
I figured we were amending what was there, because when I looked at the agreement, it said that staff, could talk about how much was produce and not produce, and they simply haven't had those discussions and agreements. So I feel like it's further tightening up that agreement and things that were left open.
Yeah, I mean, if there's de minimis conversations about items that can be resolved at staff level, I think that's certainly within the spirit of the motion to be able to transpire. But there's guideposts or around what can happen.
Understood. So making an amendment to the existing agreement based on the parameters set forth by the council.
Correct.
Correct.
So one last thing, Terry and Cleve, this will probably pretty much you guys will be able to answer this. You guys are the ones that met with them. I mean, what we're proposing with these amendments, I mean, what do you think their take is going to be on this?
Like I say, because we didn't discuss that particular lot, I know they had concerns about the mosquito lot simply because they felt that was a different type of farmer's market, similar to the Saturday market that may not work on a Wednesday night. But I don't want to speak for them. That would be totally up to what they would say. So.
Well, okay, we have a first and a second. Do we have an amendment or anything else that we want on this?
I would like to make a comment if I could. I'll try not to make it too long. This, however this gets voted, the city doesn't dislike farmers markets. They don't dislike people having fun in public spaces. I don't have a problem with any of that. I know me particularly. The market on Sunday down there that was in the Fox lot and then in the T-Trol lot, that market, my recollection, because I think I was part of those discussions, that market just never got critical mass. I think it was because she had a very nice focus, and she with this organic market. It was mentioned in one of the comments, and she just never was able to get enough things in there. So then you're sitting there closing a whole parking lot for something that really wasn't thriving. And, some folks might think that's okay, but there's going to be an awful lot of folks, and that was particularly the case there, where it wasn't okay. It wasn't okay with the businesses around there. And we were just, it wasn't tenable. When my recollection about the Ivy House parking lot wasn't, once again, nobody woke up and said, how do we destroy a farmer's market? At the time when that decision was made, I was thinking that we were actually, the city was, of course, this is sort of like weird. They thought that they might be acting on Clay Street, and they were trying to figure out a way that the market could go back to there, because we thought maybe that was where the market would end up if the Clay Street project was done. You know, we weren't trying to strangle or kill anything. These things work out the way they do. There are competing interests out there, despite what some folks might want to think. And there's also competing opinions. I had more than one merchant tell me that they were not pleased with this market, that it was impacting their business. They did not want to come forward because after the last time we discussed this 2 weeks ago, and I don't look into social media, it's a fool's errand. But apparently, and then some things were shown to me, where there were people calling to boycott the businesses that came out against the farmers. And so, you know, when we make these decisions, there's a huge backdrop here. And folks may not like it, and they may not like us or me. I can't speak for the other 4 people. But that's where the background is of all of this. And we can't ignore all those other people that come and talk to us every day. That's kind of the way it works. Anyway, sorry, I thought I would end.
All right. Okay. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, we have a first and a second on a motion. Regina, can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Clarici,
Aye.
Councilmember Gottberg,
Aye.
Councilmember Yarbrough,
Nay.
Vice Mayor No,
Aye.
Mayor Zaragoza.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, that measure passes 4-1. Thank you, everybody, for sticking around and for sticking through a very bizarre situation with the city of Placerville losing its power for a few minutes and getting us reconstituted. So thank you, everyone, regardless of where you were in this position. As you can see, it was not an easy position to get to, but I want to thank everybody for coming in and providing their public testimony. So appreciate it. Okay. Let me get resituated here because I think I'm out of place after all this. We're going to go to item 12.2, and that's to adopt a resolution approving an agreement with Arts and Culture El Dorado for use of 525 Main Street for offices and gallery space. And our city manager, Mr. Morris, has this item for us. So thank you, Cleve.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As mentioned, this is to adopt a resolution particularly related to 525 Main Street and the use of that for offices and gallery space for Arts and Culture El Dorado. As you know, back in 2018, the city entered into an agreement with Arts and Culture El Dorado to lease our historic city hall buildings located at 487, 489 Main Street. Part of that was also along the lines of shortly after that, we led an RFP to look at restoring those buildings. We did receive RFPs from 2 people. The RFP from Arts and Culture was actually awarded by the City Council with the idea that they would move forward with renovation of the building. Right after that, as we got into that, it was closer to 2020 by the time we got through the RFPs. And as you all know, that's when we went into the pandemic and a lot of issues were raised along with that. So along those lines, we have not made a lot of progress on a long-term agreement or on moving forward with the renovation. Earlier last year in approximately July, we had some structural studies done, reviewed on the building, and it was determined at that time and a decision made by our building official that the buildings were not safe to occupy. And therefore, Arts and Culture El Dorado was let know that they were going to have to vacate the buildings. We immediately began talking to them about the potential for 525 Main Street as a as a use for them going forward while renovation was happening to historic City Hall. At that time, we began those negotiations. We went back and forth, and I guess I would put we ran into some stalls from time to time, and we're not able to complete that until just recently. we met again, and we now have an agreement that we are both comfortable with. And I want to assure you that this is just a short-term temporary agreement that gets us through to the long-term agreement, but gives them a place to hold their offices and gallery space going forward. I want to also emphasize that during this process, in order to make 525 Main Street presentable for their use, we did put about a little over $20,000 into that building, removing some walls and making it so the space worked better for what their needs were. In addition, recently the council, going back to historic old City Hall, the council approved staff conducting a study to determine the stability. We're calling it an investigation stability study for that building. The cost of that was $37,000. So moving forward, we have reached an agreement, tentative agreement that is before you tonight, which would allow Arts and Culture El Dorado to move into 525 Main Street. And the rent that they would be paying is $1 per year. And I want to emphasize the reason we looked at that. When the city purchased 525 Main Street for $25,000 from the county, we entered into an agreement with Arts and Culture El Dorado, and they actually paid that cost. So that $25,000 that we paid for 525 Main Street was contributed by Arts and Culture El Dorado, and they have paid that amount to us in full. Hence why we looked at the $1 rent per year. In addition to that, it is our assumption that as we move forward with these studies and get the numbers that we need, that they will begin the fundraising effort to raise the funds to restore those buildings. Again, I mentioned the process. We're going to do the stabilization investigation study, which we have already approved at a cost of $37,000. Following that study, we anticipate one more study which will give us the information necessary to know how much it will cost to actually restore the buildings. That next study we do not have a cost on yet, but it is indicated by the consultant we are working with, the consulting engineer, the architect, that it could be between $30,000 and $40,000. So similar to the cost that we're paying for the investigation study. Once we have that number, we have both those studies completed, and we will identify a number, what it will cost to restore the buildings. We have identified a time period of 1 year in which to enter into an agreement with a long-term agreement for restoration of the buildings and a long-term use of the buildings by Arts and Culture El Dorado. So just to talk about in conclusion, our options tonight are to move forward with this agreement as outlined, which will allow them to move into 525 Main Street. We will complete the studies that we have talked about here. In addition, I wanted to mention one more thing that we have looked at that would be needed this coming year on 525 Main Street, and that is to replace the roof. And we have a cost on that also. It's funny, these are all coming in about the same, but that is estimated at $37,000 also. So those are the costs that we would be putting in there. We've already approved the $20,000 that we did to restore to improve 525 Main Street, and you've approved the $37,000 for the initial investigation study. So those are already approved. Going forward, we will need to come back to you again for the second study that is needed to identify the cost to restore the buildings, and then also for approval for the re-roof, which we would hope to do this year. And those costs are estimated at approximately the same, $37,000 and between $30,000 and $40,000. So at this time, we are requesting that you approve this resolution, which will start this process in motion, which we think can get us to our ultimate end goal eventually of restoring those buildings. And with that, I'm open to answer any questions you may have.
All right, thank you, Cleve. And I know that was a lot of years and work, you know, confined into a short report. So I really appreciate that. Any questions or comments from folks at this point? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and open up this item for public comments.
We'll start with Ruth. Go ahead.
Thank you for taking my call. I'd like to start out by saying I am a strong advocate for the arts. I own an art gallery. I was active before in the artisan fair that we had on Main Street that was cut by the city. So I just want to give you my background. But I do not understand why the Arts Council continues to have a sweetheart deal. It confounds me. In your last item, you talked about not wanting to waste taxpayer money. This one, it's hand over fist, money after money after money. And I'm sorry to say, because I do know Caitlin, and I'm aware of Terry Lamonchek, the director, and Anton, who volunteers there, and they are good people, but this has been a lack of performance on their part to raise money for construction. And I don't care that it was COVID. I don't actually think there's grant monies available to do this type of construction. I keep my ear to the whatever that, I'm aware of where there are grant monies and where there are not. And I don't know why we keep prolonging this with the Arts Council. I think I'm fine with, if they want to go into 525 and you guys want to throw 20,000 into what you call tenant improvements, which that's not a tenant improvement. Tenants pay for tenant improvements. You're making improvements to the building, you're footing the bill, whatever, that's your decision. And if you want to throw in $37,000 more for the roof, that's your decision. I mean, it's a sweetheart deal that you even got the building for $25,000. It didn't go up to bid, whatever. There's long history there. But I just think let that be their home. And relook at I know that's not the topic for tonight, but you're tying all these things together. And I think you should separate out the old City Hall. Lack of performance on their contract. It's been years. And I think it's good money after bad to hold out.
All right, thank you, Ruth.
All right, Sue Rodman, go ahead.
Can you hear me okay?
We can. Go for it, Sue.
I tend to agree with Ruth a little bit. I have watched Arts and Culture El Dorado get a very good deal from the city for years and years and years. However, we do want to support our arts in here. But I think she had a good idea of make 535 or 525, whichever it is. Just make that the permanent home. They bought the building for us. Great. We do need to put the roof on. Absolutely, you got to put a roof on a building. You can't just let it disintegrate, because that's what happens. If the roof goes, then the rest goes. But for the rest of it, and we do need to do the studies for Mustard and Ketchup, the old City Hall complex. But I'm not sure that we should guarantee Arts and Culture that they would then have the old City Hall. When they had it before, they didn't really make a very good presentation. I went to a couple of their events, and the way they had it laid out was a hazard to get into the building. You had to walk the plank, basically, and not handicap accessible. And so I think, fine, if they are happy with the building that they paid for, put a roof on it. But I think, and we do need to do the structural and the integrity testing for the old City Hall. But I don't think that we should tie it to they get to have it afterwards.
They didn't do that great a job with it when they did have it. I would say the 525 or 535, whatever it is, could be their home, and we've done the work there. Go ahead and put a roof on it. You have to put a roof on any building where the roof is failing if it's your building. And apparently it is our building. So if they're going to pay rent for $1 a year for the next 25 years till they pay off 25,000 years, great. But I think that should be where our obligation kind of ends. We're giving them, the buildings that we lease to them were the old city hall. When it's found to be not occupiable, we have given them a new space. I don't think we have much obligation beyond that. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Sue.
Caller ending in 857, go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I didn't know the previous commenters were going to say that, but that's what I was going to say is I don't understand why the city is continuing to give the arts group such a sweetheart deal and dibs on Old City Hall. When it was determined that Old City Hall must be vacated, that contract with anyone should have been terminated, done. And then the city should go forward, figure out restoration costs, come up with all of that, and then put the building, Old City Hall, up to a new RFP. It's the same argument I made with the farmers market. These are our taxpayer publicly owned buildings, and we need to recoup as much of the actual costs as possible for them. We're looking at probably $2 million to restore Old City Hall, make it ADA. It's going to be very expensive. And I asked city staff, so the original contract with arts in the city for Old City Hall, they were supposed to be doing fundraising. And I asked, how much did they actually fundraise in that roughly 18 months before the COVID shutdowns? And it apparently looks like $0 that they have fundraised so far. They're not showing they're serious. So I would ask the city council to just do the agreement with 525 Main with the arts, have them do fundraising to show they're serious, terminate any contracts with Old City Hall. City comes up with restoration dollar amounts and then put it out to an RFP. And you might actually find somebody with deeper pockets that's more serious than the Arts Council apparently is. The other problem I have is there was on the back of ketchup an old city logo on the transom glass that has been painted over by somebody. I don't know if that's city staff that did that. I don't know if it's arts or some vandal. Anyway, ketchup and mustard are historically registered national buildings, and they have been vandalized by having that old city logo painted over. So I would like that logo restored. If it's offensive, take it and put it in a museum, but somebody vandalized the back of ketchup and the old city logo, and it really has me upset. That's all. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Michael.
Sorry, I had myself muted. Terry Lamonchek, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Regina. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. We can hear you.
This is Terry Lamonchek, Director of Arts and Culture, El Dorado. Greetings, Mayor and Council from snowy Camino. I want to express my appreciation to council members for your consideration of our lease agreement. And I especially want to acknowledge the time and effort and good work that the city manager put in to get us to this point. Thank you very much, Cleve. This document really represents the beginning of our partnership and our shared goal of returning Confidence Hall and Emigrant Jane to civic life. And once this lease agreement is approved, Arts and Culture El Dorado will move in post haste and dig in. We have a huge program year ahead, and I look forward to coming back and making a presentation on everything we have planned for our community. One last comment, we would love to see more of council and staff at our gallery opening receptions, so we will be sure to keep you informed of those dates. Our board of directors joins me in expressing our appreciation of your service to the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry.
Caller ending in 525.
Hi, this is Leo Bennett Koshan. I think you've heard many good comments, so I'm not going to repeat them. The only comment, kind of a question, don't expect you to answer it now, is how both county buildings and city buildings seem to suffer, from my perspective, from not having the maintenance done. I mean, it's tempting in budget cycles to just keep putting off deferred maintenance, but we all know that ends up costing us more. And I like the term cultural properties, but it seems both the city and the county need to work harder together, that we don't end up with buildings after they have reached the end of their useful life and are going to be, I like the phrase, return to civic life, but it shouldn't cost so much, from my perspective, to bring them back. Thank you.
Thank you, Leo.
Kirk Smith, go ahead.
I want to endorse the comments of the first three folks, and also let you know that Terry LaMancha and the staff do a great job. I've gone to most events over the years, but they don't bring in much foot traffic. I've been to some events, like one where you have a chance to talk to the artists, and I think there were only 2 or 3 of us at most from the public. The rest were staff and the artists. It just doesn't bring in the foot traffic. So it's not a matter of whether they're good folks or whether arts and culture is a good thing to have around. But you had an agreement way back in the beginning where they were supposed to generate some money. So we've heard some promises about generating some more money, but based on what's been done, or more correctly, as Mike Drobish pointed out, not done, then why are you considering renewing the contract? More importantly, as some have suggested, these sweetheart deals are really troublesome. It doesn't seem like the best way to do government business. They were given a special deal in the first place. You started to rent it to them, and then someone pointed out you didn't put it out to bid. Then when you put it out to bid, you got some attractive offers, but the folks that were competing to put in a fire museum were not successful in terms of turning it in on time. I think it's best to go through the bidding process, be open, instead of these backroom discussions that we've been hearing about. Have it in the open, have some competition, see what kind of people can come up and bring in some money. Because so far, they didn't meet the promises about generating money that was made when the contract was first offered the last time. That's why I think this is not a good idea to go forward with the old City Hall buildings, give them the ones they've asked, which is the phone company building. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirk.
Kathy Lishman, go ahead.
Good evening again. Excuse me. I heard some comments tonight that I felt were really valid and need to be addressed. And I have been someone who has supported the Arts and Council in their first go around. And having been someone who majored in music, I totally support the arts. I think there's a lot to think about here. And I think some of the other speakers have raised points that probably are a concern with a lot of people. And I think it's time to take a look at the whole thing. I like the idea of letting them have the lease for the 525. I'm not sure that I agree on $1 a year. That's what the county should have sold the building for or leased it for. I think $1 a year is not enough. And also, I'm not sure if two council members have a conflict because of things that they have, either family members or them at the Arts Council. And I don't mean that to be mean. I just mean it to be an observation. And I think a lot of things were said tonight that I think you need to think about. And like I said, I support the arts. I support the Arts Council. I appreciate the fact that they have expanded what they do and what is offered and how they promote other arts situations in other communities. I just really appreciate how they have grown, but I have a concern about that building that I love so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
Last call for this item, public comment, 12.2. I see no other hands raised, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. First, we'll start with any conflicts of interest. I think that was for me because my wife is on the Arts and Culture El Dorado. Mona, if you want to make any comments to that in terms of conflicts.
Yes, I do want to make a comment on that. You did ask me whether you would have a conflict of interest. However, neither you nor your spouse have any economic interest in Arts and Council. Therefore, there is no financial interest in any decision-making on your part with respect to decisions of that account, nor is there a government contract conflict under Government Code Section 1090. So you are not interested in this decision, and you would have a non-interest according to Government Code Section 1091 and may otherwise participate.
Okay, thank you, Mona. And just another clarification in terms of contracts, does the city have to do an RFP when they're going to either dispose or rent a piece of property that they own?
Disposal of property is handled differently than leasing. So disposal of any, whether it's real property or personal property, we would have to go through the Surplus Lands Act. There's certain kinds of noticing that happens, and public agencies have the right of first refusal, then followed by nonprofits and so forth. With respect to professional services and leases, those are not competitively bid as a public contracts project, for example, would be. So it would be on the best terms and conditions that are favorable for the city. My understanding is specifically with respect to this, Arts and Culture El Dorado has been the only responsive candidate, and the city has pursued negotiations also based on that account.
That is correct. Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that. And we did go out for an RFP on this issue when we didn't have to, as just clarified. And we had one responsive answer. We did get one that was late, but we were only able to have one. And I actually, at the time, I actually gave them an additional 30 days because we did have some flaws within our own process. And so they had an additional 30 days to finish, to actually resubmit again. And they ended up being late. So that's where we are today in terms of why we have a process with Arts and Culture. And also one other thing I wanted to just, and I think this would be a question for Cleve, but we actually are not we've never, since that time, we've actually not been in contract, quote unquote, contract with Arts and Culture El Dorado. It's been on a month-to-month lease. We've never signed a long-term contract with Arts and Culture El Dorado. So they wouldn't have had anything to fundraise against. Is that correct?
That's correct. We did have originally I believe it was a 2-year lease with an extension for the 3rd year. And then we went to a month-to-month lease when they were in Historic City Hall, but nothing more than that. And it did not get into the details of fundraising at that. It was simply as a placeholder to allow us to go through the negotiations related to the request for proposal that was received.
Thank you. I just wanted to, because, there's been comments, but I wanted to kind of just put it full circle so that people have more context to how we've gotten to the point that we're at, as we move forward here. And so, like, if I was on a month-to-month contract, I certainly wouldn't be guaranteeing to raise millions of dollars for a property that I didn't know ultimately if we were going to have a long-term deal with. So I think that's part of the issue. And I think we've failed to provide that information back to the citizens in a way that they've known that they should have known more about that. And so I'll take that responsibility as not I'm not having that information out there to you all in a way that was more sunlighted, I guess, for lack of a better term at this point. But that is kind of where we're at today. So what we're looking here, what we have in front of us now is really moving towards that long-term agreement. And I think one thing that none of us have known over time is what's it going to cost? And I think this is one step in that process as we go forward, is we don't know how much it's going to cost. I know, I hope Michael Drobish is correct that it's $2 million, because I think that is on the way, way low side of what this will ultimately cost. And then we'll all have to make decisions about what we can actually do. And arts and culture will have to make a decision on whether they think that's feasible. And then as a body and as a town, what do we want to do to save these historical monuments that are, really a jewel within our city, but at what cost? So that's just wanted to do some preamble on this, and I'll open it back up. Any comments or any other comments or questions after I went off of my tangent there?
No, I appreciate the background for everyone. I think that's helpful. And I mean, the agreement tonight is really about 525. In terms of ketchup and mustard, those agreements are all yet to come. Those aren't really on the agenda tonight. So just trying to keep us focused on what we are and are not voting on.
I think what the mayor described is accurate. That is exactly what was going on. I do believe, though, that out in the public square, there was some expectation that there would be movement in terms of mobilizing support and fundraising for this thing. I'm not going to, I always want to call them the other word, arts and culture. Lots of things happened. And so I'm not going to get after them specifically, but I do believe that there was some expectation in the public that there would have been some movement on this. And so, yes, there was COVID, and COVID is kind of the Swiss Army knife of excuses. It just about covers everything. But, I think we really do have to think about this being two separate issues, and Councilmember Noem mentioned. This is about what we're going to do with 525. And to answer the question about why these buildings for one thing, our buildings are significantly older than those two things that the county owned, okay? When you have 160-year-old buildings and they're troubled, that's okay. What happens is I'll tell you right now, when the county figured out that they weren't going to be in there for X number of years more, and that was probably a decision made a couple of years before that, they probably stopped spending any money on those buildings. They're public assets. They were probably going to give them away. Well, they did. They should have given them. And so that's kind of how these things end up the way they are. That's why these buildings end up costing a lot. And then you layer on another 100 years of life on top of that. I agree with the mayor. If we get a report back that says $2 million to fix these things, that'll be the best day this town's had in a while. I'm not a contractor, but I have a sneaking feeling just what things cost, that this is going to be a lot more money than that. But I do believe we should make it very clear to the public that this is about 525 and that future decisions are still in the future about this. And that depending on what we get back in these reports, I'm thinking, once again, my humble opinion, it could open up a very broad range or narrow things down rather substantially as to who might want to take this thing on if the numbers are real bad.
Okay, so I want to just go over a quick couple of things that I heard in the comments too. Is we're talking about the money that we put into this, even 525. So even though the arts and culture brought forward the $25,000 to actually purchase the building, give us the money to purchase the building as a city from the county. With that being said, yes, we're putting more money into it. So that $25,000 is obviously being used up. I mean, we got 37,000 for a roof that's coming up. So, I mean, that's way more than the 25,000. But on top of that, it's the city that we own the building. So we had the comment of deferred maintenance. Well, this is trying to fix that deferred maintenance. So you got to kind of take into concept that, the city now owns a piece of property and it's our responsibility to take care of it, no matter who's inside it or renting it. If there's nobody in it, we still have to take care of it, because the last thing we need is it falling down and being in more of a disrepair than it currently is. So that has to be taken into consideration. So once we look at it that way, even with the ketchup and mustard building, we're going to have to spend some money figuring out, going to cost money. I mean, an engineer doesn't work for free. And trust me, I was in the construction industry for over 30 years and I still deal with construction projects. So we're going to have to pay that cost just to hopefully, yes, have the $2 million to fix it. If that's all it's going to take, that would be fantastic. Because somebody who spent 30 years in construction, I got a feeling we're looking at a lot more money than that with that building. Hopefully we can find some grants. Hopefully we've got, possibly reach out to the historical commission, society, whatever, that we can reach out and work on some of that money that is going to take to fix those buildings, because it would be an awful shame if we're not able to do that. So anyway, just wanted to address that a little bit.
Thank you, David. Any other comments here, or I'll also entertain a motion?
Do you want to motion, council member No, or should
Yeah, I was just getting ready to look at that.
Okay, well, you got
I'll
your
make
glasses
a
on.
motion that
You
we
are one step ahead of me.
I make a motion that we approve the agreements as outlined and attached on 12.2.
Okay, I will second that.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Any further discussion on this item? All right, seeing none, can we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Clarici,
Aye.
Councilmember Gottberg,
Aye.
Councilmember Yarbrough,
Aye.
Vice Mayor No,
Aye.
Mayor Saragosa.
Aye. Okay, thank you, everybody. We will move on to item 12.3. And that is to adopt a resolution approving and affirming Amendment 3 to the employment agreement with Cleve Morris, our city manager, and which with contributions equaling about 5% of base salary, and authorizing the mayor to execute the same. And Mr. Warren, I believe, has this for us, and I think Mona may have some comments here too. So, and I will as well, but I'll hand it off to Dave.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thought I'd go through the technical aspect of it, and I don't know if you want to kick it off with justification first.
Yeah, I'll do that. Thank you, Dave.
Okay.
This has been something, and I know this is always tough for Cleve, but this has been something that we've been working on with Cleve probably back till 2017. Prior, I think, to me being on city council, and at the time there was always sort of a historical. The position of city manager was at a lower point than other city managers comparable size in cities in the area. So there was always this push to be able to try and equalize that to some degree, and not just to equalize it for the sake of doing it, but because it's a really good job that Cleve's been doing as our city manager. And, I look at the names down here on our screen: Terry, Rebecca, Joe, Pierre, Nick. We have a really top talented team because we have a really good leader. And, people don't stick around and want to work somewhere when you don't have a good person at the top. And that's the real, I think for me, that to me shows, the work that Cleve's done, his dedication to the job, his dedication to the city of Placerville. And so, it's been challenging for us to find ways to try to compensate him for that. And then, as we just talked about before, COVID hit, and then there was other, things that kind of took us out of doing this earlier because we just didn't know, and it wouldn't have been the right time to do it when we weren't even sure, what our finances were going to be as a city going into COVID. So we're coming back now, and we believe that this is the right way to compensate Cleve for his work and to equalize the pay as a city manager. So that's off the top. Then I'll let Dave and Mona talk to the more specifics of it.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate that. And as you mentioned, the proposed Internal Revenue Code 457B contributions are similar to a 401k in that in the private sector, whereby contributions are made on a pre-tax basis. The city has two existing IRC Section 457 plans. One plan is with CalPERS, the other is with Mission Square Retirement. If approved, Mr. Morris will have the option of depositing the deferred contributions into one of the two plans. It's important to note that these contributions would not be credible towards Mr. Morris's defined benefit pension. If approved, contributions would begin March 4th prospectively on 5% of Mr. Morris's base salary. The projected cost between March 4th and June 30th of this year would be $3,073. That amount wasn't included in the budget. However, due to a partial position vacancy within the administration department, the $3,073 cost would be absorbed within the administration department. And then the projected annual cost is $9,399. If approved, staff would include the $9,399 in the projected fiscal year 23-24 operating budget. In order to formalize this action, the council would need to approve the third amendment to Mr. Morris's employment agreement. And with that, staff respectfully request that the council adopt the resolution approving amendment number 3 to the employment agreement with Mr. Morris, which provides the city paid IRC Section 457B deferred compensation contributions equal to 5% of base salary effective March 4, 2023, and authorizing the mayor to execute the same. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. And I know city attorney also had a hand in this, so if she has any comments as well. Thank you.
Covered everything. Warren.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, then. Thank you, Mona. Okay. With that, any comments or questions from City Council? All right. Seeing. Oh, Jackie.
No, go ahead. Let's take public comment.
All right. Sounds good. All right. We'll go ahead and go to public comment.
All right, we'll start with Ruth. Go ahead.
Yeah, 9 o'clock, getting late, but this is worth it. I want to say that City Manager Cleve Morris is worth his weight in gold. And I think he's a fine man, and he's technically very capable, and he's very approachable, and he even answers the phone when Regina isn't available. And he's a great guy. So anything that we can do to let him know he's appreciated, I think should be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth.
Caller 857, go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I absolutely agree. Cleve is worth his weight in gold. We can agree and disagree over this and that over the years, but he is such an incredible leader and a person. Honorable, approachable, just he's so dedicated to this city. And so just my heart out to Cleve. Thank you for your service, and I hope you can get what you deserve, because you've made the city great over the last few years. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Kathy Lishman, go ahead.
I agree with what Michael said and what Ruth said about Cleve, but I do want to say that after you get this Cleve, you cannot retire for a very long time. So I know in the past there have been times when maybe a salary has been raised just before someone retired, and that is not what this is. And I know you've been working on it for a very long time. I guess my question would be, how does this affect everybody else in the city? Does it mean that it affects any other employees or department heads, or is it just for Cleve and what happens down the road? But I do want to say that I agree with everything, all the compliments that Cleve was given tonight. He always answers your email, and he is very approachable. And
City council has lost, or sorry, City Hall has lost power again.
You all this to a regular schedule.
And I just received notice from staff. They're in the conference room on the fourth floor. Regina seems to have connection. She's in the meeting, but none of them have been able to actually connect. So they have received power, but they're having trouble connecting.
Okay. So I'm gonna, Mona, if this is okay, I'm gonna go ahead and make a decision to go ahead and cancel the rest of tonight's meeting. Especially since we don't have any council members back. We can't conduct this.
Good thing we got
anyways.
police item.
No quorum. So we will go ahead and adjourn tonight. Yes.
Michael, just quickly, I'm on Regina right now because my computer's down, but Joe, Chief Wren contacted me and said he heard fire dispatch to power lines down. So I'm guessing it's gonna be a while. So
yeah, Tim just said that they're down in Camino as well. So this is a wider outage than
Nick said Somerset is out too. So
yeah,
I lost power at the exact same time out in Somerset too. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So there you go. So residents, thank you for bearing with us, but we're going to go ahead, unfortunately. And
I'm sorry. Can I make one more comment?
Yes.
I'm just kind of thinking out loud. If we don't have quorum, so we wouldn't.
We don't have quorum.
Yeah, we can't continue it to a date certain, and then it would be a regular meeting. So never mind. Okay.
Yeah, sorry. I know I thought about that too, but we only have 2 council members.
Okay.
Somebody else.
All right. Exactly. I mean, command decisions now. All right. So good evening, Placerville. Thank you, everybody. Bye.